Hello and welcome back to Church of Entropy live streams, joined today by Ghost to have a little chit chat about, well, one of my favorite subjects for sure, which is quantum mind, specifically quantum psychology, because I just wrote a blog post there that I've been working on for a while and thinking about it for a while. But I'm always kind of hesitant to go into these really what are abstract subjects when there's no concrete example to really point to. And I think that when there's no concrete example, it's really hard to actually get the lesson out of it. So just want to say thanks, Ghost, for joining, who comes with some fodder that we can use for lessons in quantum psychology, better sanity for everyone. Welcome to the show, Ghost. If you're ready to start talking, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Hi, thanks, and thanks again, Jen. And I bring some interesting stuff to the table. A lot of events in the last few months have given me a lot of things to think about. And one of the things was quantum mind. And because of you're a quantum physicist and you're into reincarnation, I'd always been open to it. And I thought it would be interesting to sort of explore that. And I came across a video, and you and I discussed, maybe this would be a good thing to show people, and maybe try to enlighten ourselves and others out there that how this matters to how it matters to our lives and how we can apply it.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, a lot of these quantum mind videos are interesting, but a lot of the stuff makes it's a bit hard to validate some of the stuff in it, unfortunately, because you get into stuff like Big Bang, which I don't believe in, and a bunch of other stuff that I don't believe in. So, we can watch it. I have no clue what this video is going to be. I'm just letting the audience know that it's totally going in dry on this one for me. So I thought we might want to warm people up first with some type of more superficial banter, possibly regarding current events and certain people's desire to start drama as well as make everything about them. So
Yeah, I see this happening a lot, and recently in your interactions, that video that you just posted, with Claire kicking you out a couple times, what was that all about? I didn't get a chance to watch. I watched your video, but I didn't see the video beforehand that led to that.
Well, she's been trying to get me to read the Quran for a really long time. And I've stated about, 100 times that I'm not going to read particular religious documents because my focus needs to be primarily on science. Duh. Yeah. So I'm just scrolling through Claire's blog here to try to see what kind of stuff she's covering, because sometimes it just seems like anytime she talks about me, which is kind of nice that she hasn't done that in a while. Maybe I'm getting boring for her. Let's hope that that's what's going on right now.
You seem to be doing more streams with Jay.
Well, she's trying to marginalize me. She wants to marginalize me to the margins, unless I read the Quran.
Yeah, I just don't see the point of it if you're coming at it from a quantum mind perspective. Aren't you transcending desert-based religions at that point?
What a great question. Yeah. I just think it's like, I love religion, but I also understand that contextually a lot of people really hate it. So I think it's maybe better to approach it from what you could call a secular perspective. This is basically as secular as I could get, which is just 100% of a focus on science, so that people who are, hardened atheists will still see the value of it, basically.
Yeah, and certainly I will see value in it. And I wouldn't call myself a hardcore atheist. I would say I'm an agnostic leaning atheist. Maybe I'll even consider deism. But I'm always open to good arguments, and if they make sense, I'm open to them. But some people, I think that if you're coming at it from a religious perspective, asking you to read the Quran, it's like a step back. It doesn't make sense. She should be stepping up to uh, entropy or entropism.
Step up to entropy, bros. Well, yeah, I mean, if I read one religious text, then I'm basically saying that I'm according it a higher status. And it's interesting that, there was this theme of shaming that came out because Claire was basically trying to shame me into reading the Quran, and then she's like trying to shame everyone into, conforming to certain beliefs. And it's really funny how it always like plays out. And so I was trying to explain how shame worked, basically, and why shaming doesn't always work. And she got really triggered by that because she realized she doesn't really have the capacity to shame people, I think.
Shame is like a control over people. It's a manipulation, right? That's really what it is. It's you want to break somebody down. You want to guilt them into doing what they want.
Well, what I defined it, I just put on my blog in the blog post. I can put it in the comments there if people want to check it out. But I defined humiliation as resulting from shaming, and the mechanism for shaming being to use one's status to compel particular behaviors in others by expressing disapproval of their mannerisms and actions. Type of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, so she's using this as a tactic to get you to read secular Quranism, and then she's shaming you, but she's also kicked you out of the stream. Now that's an extreme thing that I've never seen her do before. So I think the level of trigger is going up. It's ramping up for her, don't you think?
Yeah. Why don't we play that clip? It's only about a minute, and I think I think the audience needs to know. They need to know what's going on right now.
Right on.
So I'll just play it and I'll unmute back when it's done. Improvement against, and I think, wow, he must have been doing something right when he was learning through all those books. What an exceptionally smart person. That's what I think. Okay, but I'm not going to change my view that the oral tradition is the superior manner to transmit information.
Because you want to control the interpretation as well as the way the words are being uttered. It's transparent.
You want to control the interpretation of your scripture. Of course I want to control the interpretation of my scripture. That's why I'm getting so good at debates.
Yeah, but you don't even have the rules. You don't even have the words. And when we ask you what the oral tradition is, you say you won't tell us. It's so transparent. It's a contrick. It's a contrick. And nobody's going to believe you. But
and the proof is right here. Ta-da! Da-da-da-da. This is the proof that I internalized it. So, yep.
John.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, we're back. Yeah, that was one of the ejections. I don't know if that was the first or the second ejection, but I figure that in terms of cult prestige, getting rage ejected versus rage quitting, I figure that's a higher step up in prestige. And the fact that it happened twice, well, what can I say?
Yeah, I'd say that's a step up. That's a level up. Yeah, rage ejection. I like that term. That's pretty cool.
You want to know what did it too? I can even just like pull it up right now. This is what did it. This was the thing that triggered Claire into ejecting me. I just want everyone to know. So maybe I should put some sort of warning when I'm displaying. But it's definitely inspired me to improve my vibe here. I've got more lessons in quantum mechanics, so feel free to be triggered. Feel free to eject yourself from the audience. Yeah, that's basically what I learned from that little.
So you brought up the quantum stuff and that you couldn't have it, huh?
I didn't bring up the quantum stuff. I think what was happening right before the thing is, like, I don't exactly remember the order of what happened, but I know at some stage Vance was talking about the Quebec Party, because the Quebec Party, there's like literally just a province in Canada that has its own like party at the national level, basically. it's because Quebec wanted to separate a while back. They've always been sort of separate because they were French. I don't know if you're familiar with any of this stuff.
No, I'm not. But can I just point out real quick that looks like a nail has been hammered in the chat.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Do we need to do some, do we need to do a damage investigation? Do we need to go look at the wreckage?
I think it'd be interesting to look at it. I don't think we need to do any damage assessment.
Will to power, you did it again. You're going to make me have to wrench John Vance now because Claire's probably already sent me 10 DMs. Saying that what just happened was an absolutely abhorrent use of censorship, unlike kicking people out of streams twice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm just shocked. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, every day it's something new. But that's sort of normal because the way I approach statecraft is it's like one giant priest school. So there's bound to be some, crossed wires at times. So while Vance sits in the 300-second cuck shed, maybe he should think about what brought this on. What about your actions, Vance? Led this young man to use his will, so to speak, to censor you actively because, he could have been doing literally anything else. So anyway, back to the show. Okay. It's all kind of funny. It's all kind of funny because I've been on this theme for a long time, and I wonder if you tell me what you think about it. But it's just this idea that like nobody should basically say that anybody has a mental problem, because even if they do, it doesn't really help anything.
On the mental problem, let's expand upon that. I mean, people can be upset. I mean, that's not like a mental problem, right? It's disagreeing with somebody is not a mental problem. But if you're kicking them out of the call, you're hammering nails, you're censoring people, that's not a mental problem. Well, maybe that starts to go in that direction of a mental problem where you can't take what somebody says with a grain of salt. So it's triggering you. You're going down this path where it's bothering you to the point where you have to kick people or ban them or time them out. So if she's doing that and she's doing you a favor, like you said, by raising your cult prestige, but she's also doing herself a disservice by doing so. She's not leveling up. She's not using her own. I don't know. Is there a thing in secular? I don't even want to know.
Secular Quranism. Yeah, there's so many interesting topics really that came up. Like I was just I felt blessed at the vast array of learning material that was furnished to us this week. Like just this lesson that the people that hate you a lot, sometimes they just really secretly love you. They're just too insecure to say it.
Is that like a reverse psychology?
Well, it's just a sort of understanding. Like I wanted to make this distinction is that like there's love, hate, and indifference. And if love is the opposite of hate, then what's indifference? And if indifference is the opposite of love, what's hate? That was kind of the way I was thinking it through. I think I'm a little sharper now because I just had to write that article. And so it always takes a lot of working myself up to get those articles out because for me, it's oral tradition all the way. But, I don't think I could pull it off if I had no blog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of gives you something to vent and actually articulate what it is you're thinking and how it breaks it down for yourself, right? I mean, some people journal. I guess that's the new blog, right?
No, that's the old blog. Blogging is the new journalism.
Okay, I got you. Now everybody gets to read your content instead of your journal, right?
Yeah, because I'm such a narcissist.
What makes you a narcissist?
I'm making a joke. Because my blog is like, there's basically almost nothing about me on my blog. And there's people that blog like about themselves. That's all they do. It's just like, it's basically a personality cult. And I I mean, I jokingly say I have cult, like I jokingly say I have a personality cult, and I talk about cult prestige. But like these other people, if I'm a narcissist, what are these people? Right?
Right. I guess trolls.
Well, though they're like even more narcissistic because they're like, to me, narcissistic is just focusing on yourself, whereas I'm like, I guess I'm too focused on my ideas. But it's like, if she does, if we have the debate a million times, I'm not going to change my mind. If she wants to keep talking, fine, but like we have to, I don't want her or anyone to call anyone kind of crazy, because I guess my point in all this is that no matter what the definition of mental illness is, it doesn't help things to call people mentally ill, like especially this autism thing I keep coming back to and harping on. It doesn't create a good culture to go around calling people autistic when it results in self-censorship, which I see that a lot. It's like someone. Go ahead.
I want to say that I think part of leveling up is self-reflection, and I think quantum mind gives us that. And you're right about people saying, or I think they use "you have a mental illness," quote unquote, too loosely. They use it in a derogatory term, and that basically you're not up to par with them. You're not good with them, so they're going to put you down. And I think that if you use this idea of quantum mind, you can get past all that. You can transcend it. It becomes nothing to you because you don't let it affect you. And,
depersonalization is what you're describing.
Okay.
Because usually what happens to people is they get hurt by a bunch of other people, and on some level they start to believe that those people intended to hurt them, which then leads them to have like a sort of paranoid reticence to engage at all with anyone. But then when you understand quantum mind, you realize that people hurt other people mostly out of ignorance than malice. Oh, rather than malice.
I didn't hear that last.
I said usually when people hurt other people, it's out of ignorance rather than malice.
Malice,
and
okay, gotcha.
Understanding your own limitations in cognition, which is what quantum mind does. Because like the first thing is like, holy fuck, what the hell does that even mean? So the first step is realizing like this is kind of complicated shit, right? And then you kind of get further into it and realize that people they're kind of in a like funnel of awareness. There's all this world going on around them, but they're only really tuned into like a very tiny little tunnel vision of it at the end of the day. And so by realizing that everyone's essentially in this trap, experiencing, ironically, the same material world, you kind of can see why people act in a way that used to hurt you, but doesn't anymore, because you don't take their own flaws personally, I guess. That's certainly how it works for me. It's trying to have a certain expectation of people that is never met.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I have a lot of expectations. I have expectations even for sheeple. I would hope that they wake up to conspiracy theories and whatnot. But in
No.
this realm, I want to try to change how I view things. Like I don't want to be butthurt. I don't want to be hurt by people, because it's happened enough times in life that I don't want that to affect me. So I think that the lesson we're going to give today in quantum mind has a lot to deal with that, and I think it's an eye opener for me, and I hope it is for everybody else. I'm sure you're already there though.
Woohoo! Yeah, I've always been there and spent most of my life basically trying to get into your heads to try to relate to you. Not you specifically, but everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's mostly what I've been up to. So, I have various means of achieving that. My recent blog post, I got a picture of myself there. Apparently, it's not obvious that that's me. Obviously, it is. Going over some rapids in an inflatable kayak. So, I just really want to dive right in and understand it all. And now this is like the time of just chilling. with friends and rediscovering the oral tradition. And it's so funny how many people are fucking triggered by that. The amount of fetching lately of people being like, well, this is a waste of time of streaming. It's like, when you were writing your fucking blog and doing your gay streams, was that a fucking waste of time then? Why is it a waste of time now, but not back then? People, this is like, fuck, I'm so fucking triggered by this thing when people are like, what a bunch of fucking losers talking, like, especially in Claire's chat, which is fucking toxic. Claire's chat is why you have to impose some barriers on what people can say in a fucking chat. The difference between my chat and Claire's is the reason why you have to impose some type of limitations on what people can say. What happens in Claire's chat?
Yeah, it's a lot like Zero Chat, where anything goes, no holds barred.
Zero's chat is not like that. Claire's chat's a goddamn den of vipers. Zero's chat is more just like those people are all friends. So they may have like their drama du jour, because certain people, as we know, won't name names, have a penchant for drama. But we don't hold against them because we understand that in their own life, they were taught that drama accompanies, emotional bonding. So it's all good.
Yeah, and maybe these people in chat could use these lessons in the quantum mind. Maybe they'll snap out of it. I don't know.
Well, they won't, for the reasons you're thinking. Because the thing that brought you around to it was your own inner drive and love of knowledge.
And self-reflection.
You had a vast inner life, whereas the NPCs do not. And so they will switch over eventually, but it won't be for the same reason you did. For them, it'll be like, look at these fucking cool ass people on a live stream. I guess I better do everything they're doing and believe everything they believe in. And, people want to bitch ahem Claire that nobody understands my teachings. First of all, that's not true. And second of all, the plebs don't understand how the state works now. So what does it matter? Pro tip, it doesn't fucking matter. The only thing that matters is if like those couple key people can get it. But the getting it is an inner thing, right? Like it's not like you were nothing, then you met me and then boom, it was like you were on that trail and then eventually found a buried treasure.
Yeah, you sounded like a credible person to me, even though I didn't believe in reincarnation, like you do. There was a way that you present yourself that I thought was snarky and fun. It was you're not necessarily, people can perceive you as mean, but I don't think that's what it is. And when we started to chat, I started to see why it was that I did like the things that you were talking about. And you're right. Like I had a drive, a desire to learn new things. I'm tired of talking about the same old content over and over again. But it's necessary to talk about certain things, like we're talking about now with certain people. But the desire to learn how to better myself, I think, is the direction that led me to chatting with you. And here we are.
It was so funny how it all started out, eh? Okay, because for whatever reason, I'm like thinking you came in with Cade, but you said you're not part of the Cade sphere, so forgive the error. But basically, my memory is you coming in around the same time as like Cade discovered Claire's stream. And
no, that was it. No, that was it. I just wouldn't say I'm a Cadeite or something.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, anarcho-Cadist. That's what I call them.
Okay, yeah. I've dabbled around in all those different pockets, and so yeah, that's how we did kind of meet up, was through Cade finding Claire. So yes, that's how it happened.
And it was so funny because at first Simon was like, "Oh my god, I'm so interested in quantum mind. I've been interested in quantum physics. Oh my god, Cade." And Cade's like, he literally like got really pissed. I didn't actually understand why he got so pissed. Did you see that part? It was like a 3-minute.
Yeah, I did. That was. Do you have? I don't know if you have. I don't think you have that queued up, but I do remember it.
I didn't know this would come up. No, I'm not that contrived with my conversations.
And now he's changed his tune about you. I don't know exactly, but I get the feeling that.
Who changed your tune?
I think Simon.
Oh, Simon, yeah. Yeah, that was the ironic part, was that, you know, you were like started off, you were just like basically no opinion, agnostic. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, agnosticism, very wise position when you actually literally don't know. And he was just like so over the top, and now he's just like totally fucked off to God knows where. And you're like, let's learn about the quantum mind for hours. And I'm just like, yeah. That's kind of another lesson, is you never know who's gonna like fulfill your codependence needs. Because I'll come out and say it, like, I have theocratic codependence needs because I just really love theocracy and it's my identity. So if I can't relate to people theocratically, I'm basically very sad and lonely. And it's just like, why live, right? And if you can control when you take birth, then literally, why live?
And then that's exactly how it starts. You know, people come from different perspectives. You know, you're right. I was agnostic. I was trying to feel out the pocket, and
there's no fucking pocket, dude. I promise you. What you stumbled into was not a fucking pocket. It was a goddamn abyss. It was the toilet of the internet.
I thought we had the toilet locked down. I thought we had copyright claim on that. But okay, so. We all fell into this abyss, and I was feeling it out, you know, but I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm very skeptical of a lot of things, you know, and especially on the internet. You get this, yeah, well, you see it all the time in our world. Is this person's a shill, that person's an agent. You know, these people are working together, and sure, those things are going on. But you know, I think that realistically, I've been down that road before, some years ago, and it leads you down this path of being a targeted individual, and that leads into paranoia. You're always, you know, suspicious of people looking at you or following you around. So I didn't want to go down that road, and so I tried to bide my time. I had some opinions about certain things that Claire was saying. It sounded like she was contradictory with secular Quranism. She's British and she's Asian, and she's standing in front of a swastika Nazi flag. You know, and I don't know if it is a Nazi flag, right? It's not the Buddhist swastika, right? So there was a lot of contradictions there. So I held my tongue for a long time, probably a month or two, and yeah, I just started to feel it out. But yeah, that's more or less where you came in, and you were snarky, you were engaging, and you have a way about you that you know, people like to listen, and some people not.
Oh man, that's a huge compliment. Thank you so much. Yeah, the goal with designing this persona was like so that in the people that like they had a good base, but they had like some mixed up feelings, they would just hate me instantly. And then the people who like were super cool and like on the level of like actually getting jokes, they'd be like, "Oh, she's kind of cringe, but let's read the blog." And then they'd be like, "Boo!"
Yeah, there's some crash and burn there. Yeah.
Rundlefly says he wants the link to this stream, but I wanted to ask you if you mind. I don't like. I know you and him have had.
Yeah, we've had some beef in the past.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, he basically has that with like 90% of people. So if it helps to depersonalize the beef, but it's totally up to you.
Honestly, if we have anybody else on the stream, I would prefer Will to Power.
Did he ask to come on? I haven't been watching the chat, and he didn't message me to come on. But did he?
He did ask me. He did ask me even. So I appreciate him asking me. That was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm basically can't usually read the chat too much, just because streaming is a little bit more involved in terms of the energy that you have to put into it. So, okay, I sent Will to Power the link, and you want me to just hold off for for now.
Yeah, let's do that for now. And after a while, we can maybe bring him in if he's got something good to say. If not, we can just put him out, right?
Into the cuck shed. It's actually really hard to cuck shed people. That's the only drawback to Hangouts. But basically, the way I'm going to mitigate that is like I'm going to have my super badass e-persona that's going to come out. Motherfucking Sensei is going to pull out that motherfucking sword in a minute, son. So there's that massive, what's the word? Inhibition to fucking over my stream. There's that. And I've also got this emergency thing that if something bad happens and somebody comes on and gets the hangout link, for example, like I've got my exit strategy plan for if it happens again. I've got like a please stand by, we're experiencing technical difficulties video. So let's see if I can find it.
Well, we could just reserve him to the last 10, 15 minutes of the stream. That way it's not a big shit show. And then you can pull the eject button.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. There's no fucking eject button. So once someone's in, I either have to say, "Can you please leave?" which I really don't want to fucking do. Anyway, I'm just demoing the old technical difficulties video, but I'll turn it off. I just want people to know that I have a technical difficulties video. That if somebody comes in to try to shit up the stream, I fully intend to launch the technical difficulty. I engineered that after the whole Tipton thing. Ghost.
Oh, see, I was looking for that when a certain Lashan Hara came into my stream, and good thing I was not live. I just had an open hangout, and he came out and was playing porn, thinking that I was live, like he was gonna shit my fucking stream down with his playing porn. So
what the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah, we need an eject button, and Google Hangouts took that away in August because I remember we had that ability to, put people out. Yeah.
You're fucking trolling with us. That's what this thing was. Because taking that shit out would have been more work than just leaving it in. Because there's like redundancies with this shit, guys. Like they can just leave shit in. They literally took that out to fuck with our shit, which is why I had to spend hours upon hours. It was fun though with people figuring out OBS because I got to know everyone a little better. It was great.
I just love how too, like a fortnight later, Streamlabs came out. I think it's Streamlabs or was it StreamYard? One of those fucking two. And it came out and it's like the exact same thing as Hangouts.
StreamYard.
And so they're like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, we're gonna make it so much harder for streamers. And then someone just comes up with free software that does it. Like you can't stop the internet. You can't censor the internet.
Jay got mad at me for not teaching him StreamYards, and I taught him. Like I spent 2.5 hours teaching him in Claro.
It's so easy to use. Mind you, he is a boomer, so. I apologize. I'm eating breakfast as we speak.
Yeah, and hello to you too, Will. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you asked nicely.
Well, because I'm a respectable person. I don't just come in and shit up people's fucking spaces.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. You fucking Sword of Justice OV pretty good there the other day. That was good. I was like, what?
Let's not talk about it.
Okay.
Let's not talk about it.
What we try to do sometimes on the stream is analyze the behavior to like understand the quantum psychology of it, but we don't have to.
Oh.
We don't have.
This like a segment? This should be a show.
It's gonna be the show.
It should be a weekly thing.
It's gonna be like it's gonna be like a 24/7 thing.
It's like a European week in review. Rather than psychoanalyzing someone, we try to put it to a quantum psychology.
Let's transition, guys.
Yeah. I would much prefer Ghost on here than Duvid. That's my personal take, and I have my own private biases about Duvid.
Wait a minute, I thought you were Duvid's biggest fan.
Duvid's my biggest fan. I can feel him. Like, what do they call it? Projecting when you like astral projecting into my room at night and just fapping. I can feel it. It's quite disturbing actually. What do you think about it?
The old blue eye curse, that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He's just jelly belly that I'm more Scottish than he is.
There is something sexy about Scottishness. My husband has Scottish looking hands and they're so thick.
Okay, let's divert here. I
Thank
don't want to
you.
hear about your husband's hands
Thank
and
you.
how sexy arousing they are.
So you're of Scottish descent, but you live in Australia, right?
That's correct. My grandparents are Anglo-Scottish. They're from the north of England. Before the Kingdom of Alba actually existed, the Anglo Kingdom of Northumbria actually went past Edinburgh into modern Scottish territory. So, yeah, Anglo, Scot, Dutch.
Okay. And how does it? They got down to Australia. How did your family get there?
Boats.
By boat.
hmm
Yeah. I mean, like, more or less. When was that actually?
The earliest record I have on my father's side is I think 1898 when my grandfather was born here. Not sure about his grandparents. We don't have the documentation for it. You could say that they came here as colonists, or you could say that they came here as settlers, or I don't actually know. It's speculation, but the name Smith is from North England. It's Anglo-Saxon in origin, and it occupied the people group of the Anglos are living in Scotland, and there's a myth around that in my family that he was born in Scotland, but I think that his father was born in Scotland. So yeah,
So
when you start
trace
tracing it back, we because we're working class people, it's very difficult for us to trace back our roots. And rather than if we were like from the landed aristocracy, we could trace it back thousands of years. We could only trace it back like a couple of centuries.
I'm surprised you can trace it back that far. With the name Smith is like so vast in so many countries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The reason we actually found out the evidence that we have right now is because I have an aunt who has a friend who works in like the documentation for Ancestry.com. And so she actually got inside information, stumbled across my grandfather's registration for World War One, and was just like, oh shit, look at this, so.
Okay. Yeah.
My grandfather fought in World War One. Like that's the age difference.
Oh wow. Yeah. It's wow.
When
So
most
you're,
people have like grandparents that fought in World War Two or Vietnam, my grandfather fought in World War One at the age of 17.
So your parents would have had you quite late then, and they would have your
Yeah,
grandparents.
my dad was born when my grandfather was let me see, this would have been 68, no 62. Yeah, my granddad was my father was born when my granddad was 62, and I was born when my father was 37.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite an age disparity. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I say I'm old school, I mean it. So it's funny that we've had 3 generations in 100 years.
Wow. Is there any? You have Did they have other kids before at 62? I would have assumed. At 62,
Yep.
that's quite late. How old
No,
was
my
your
dad was the
grandmother?
youngest. My dad was the youngest. I think my grandma would have been, I think maybe in her late 20s when they got married, something like that.
You said 30s, 40s,
Late 20s, I think.
late 20s. Oh,
Mhm.
so there's like a 40-year.
I think I couldn't tell you for a fact, but I think that's the case. I actually met my grandmother. I never met my grandfather. He died when my dad was 9.
That's pretty interesting family history.
Mhm.
Yeah, you don't see that too often.
Will is my favorite Anglo so far in all my travels.
What? It's not John Vance?
He's a close second, but
What
your
about Culture Bearer?
your BTFO of free will, it thawed a part of my heart that I thought would remain frozen over this whole time.
Just as a question, you guys can't hear me chewing, can you?
Only a tiny bit, but it's not like gnarly. It's not. It's
Okay.
like it's like the cool sort of like, what's he doing? His life's so exciting. He's got to chew. Rather
Well, I'm
than
almost finished. I'm wrapping up, so and then it's on to
rather
coffee.
than like Rufus style cud chewing, where it's just like chewing for 5 minutes at a time. I don't think he realizes when he mutes his computer, he's not muting his own audio. So it's
You don't have very good rapport with Rufus. Why is that, Jen? You guys didn't. Figured you guys would get along a little bit, but
wait, who does Jen have good rapport with? Honestly, I can count those people on one hand. Yeah, exactly.
Me and Gandalf. for sure.
No offense, Jen, but let's be honest, the arsehole culture is working.
I swear to God, there's more than just you guys. The haters are just loud. They're not that numerous. It was basically like, here's a good strategy for you guys. If you think I'm going to like someone or someone's going to like me, you're probably dead wrong. Okay? I'll put it that way.
Well, it turned out I hated your guts when I first met you, and now we're good friends, so it's funny.
And
Because I'm like, who is this woman on my sphere? This is a man's only space. And then next minute,
OV persuaded him to have me on.
yeah, I was adamant not to have her on. He's like, come on, man, you like her, you know, it's just funny, you know. And I'm like, fuck you, OV, you shouldn't let women on this stream. We came in, and I'm like, OV, shut up, I want to hear her talk.
Yeah, OV really coping really hard. We had a quote unquote leadership competition between me, Gandalf, and him, and Pat was supposed to vote, and he got more votes. So he's been rubbing that in our faces for a while. This
is why democracy doesn't work.
I was just gonna say that you read my mind. Entanglement bros. Hashtag.
I was when that happened, I thought it was a little bit high school. It felt like a popularity contest.
Mm-hmm.
You presented the best argument for leadership, honestly, Jen. You know, Gandalf was there with you, and so you know, voting would just seems silly. But that's anyway. It doesn't matter how many people like you. And do you want to tell the audience and Will what you told me about setting the bar low?
The problem with setting the bar low is that it applies to so many different things. You're going to need to be a little bit more specific. You mean in terms of interpersonal relationships?
Yeah, like how you start out with somebody.
You want to have two things. One of them is a really high awareness of your own needs, and the other one is a very low expectation of anybody that you meet. You have no expectations of them as little as possible, and you're open to them, like being able to reciprocate your sort of needs for codependence. But that's like
everything's basically charity.
It's a minority of people you can connect with. I don't feel like this is charity because it's basically what I'm in it for is like other people who think about things in similar way as me. So, but yeah, like commoners, talking to commoners, I definitely look at that as charity. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody said the magic words.
Sorry?
Somebody in chat was saying magic words. Not that I'm triggered, but that just slanderous and libelous, you know?
What do you mean? Okay, we don't want to go over the top. We want to be cool. We want to be able to take criticism.
I didn't hide her. I just timed her out.
Oh. Yeah, someone was complaining that you timed them out 6 times, willpower. And then I
thought it was John Vance.
Adelaide.
I don't apologize.
No, that was me.
Because I started. Oh, you timed out Adelaide. See, why don't talk in your mouthful? So I got blamed for your actions. I love that.
Get used to it. Happens to me all the time.
That's gay. So see, what happened was I timed out Vance, and then some other person's sock appeared, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is Vance, because they're complaining that they got banned, so I just kept on banning them. So what happened was I banned Vance, he banned Adelaide, and then I kept on banning Adelaide thinking it was Vance. and then she got really snide with me, and then I just banned her anyways.
You're pretty perceptive though, because you did pick out the other sock account that was his.
Oh, hectic. But yeah, I said to this person that if you keep on going, I'm going to ban you anyways, regardless if I made a mistake beforehand. You're still doing bannable behavior, and then just arced up and like, I warned you, bang. I don't care. I'm here to watch and read constructive comments. If you have coarse language and you have something that's not productive in the conversation, you're going to be ignored. Whether that be through me ignoring your message or for me to ignore you from the whole chat.
Yeah, if you're gonna criticize me, that's fine. I'm open to criticism, but don't be slanderous and libelous. That's just
exactly.
We want the good criticism, but we understand the good criticism doesn't really come up that often because in order to criticize our positions, it takes a significant amount of effort to really be able to defend a position like that. So what we want to do is sort of save the chat for the good questions and the insightful remarks.
And I would say, if this was an example that was IRL, let's say that your persona, right, your account, your sock was an outfit, right, and then so you went and you said these distracting and detracting things from the conversation, you got booted out, and then you changed clothes and tried to get back in, saying the same shit, you would keep on getting booted out. You know what I mean? Like if you treated this as an IRL conversation with, you know, within the context of you're sitting in a lecture or you're sitting in a seminar or you're sitting in the pub and you keep on yelling all this bullshit rather than asking questions, then you're going to get treated the same way. So people think for all of a sudden on the internet that there's fucking free speech. Like, no, if you're being an asshole, you're going to be treated like a fucking asshole. And then they have a criticism, and then they have a go at me. It's like, you're censoring me. Like, dude, you're not treating it as a conversation. You're not giving it the right respect that you should.
Exactly. And you see this in real life all the time, that people get up and start shouting at somebody at a that's giving a speech. They get ushered out, don't they? And some of them even get handcuffed.
And look, it's not the fact that what their criticism is saying may be irrelevant. It's the fact that there's a time and a place for it, and there's common courtesy and social structures that you're supposed to uphold. That's the issue. Like, whatever your thoughts may be, I'm not having a go at your thoughts. It's just there's a time and a place and there's a way to do it.
Right. And you know, probably a place like that would be a bar where you get your teeth punched out.
Well, exactly. You know, exactly. IRL, there'd be threats of violence, and here they can get away with it. And the only threat there is is them creating another sock to come back because they're banned. That's why I have no sympathy for people that want to whinge and bitch. Like I said, like I get powerful by every tier. It's like I don't care. It's the internet. You know what I mean? Like if you want to treat it respectfully, as if it's a platform, and treat people as you would treat them in real life, then I haven't got like I will participate. People like some of the wignats that hang around, you know, Patrick Seidman, Orbit Patrick Seidman, and people that orbit OV and OV himself want to treat this conversation as something special rather than as if I was talking face to face with someone. And I don't like saying like, oh, you know, like fucking if you were here, I'd bash you and everything. Like you wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like you don't say that stuff in public. So why would you stoop to that level on the internet? It's not that the internet brings this out of people. It's that people allow themselves to stoop to this level because there's no repercussions. So I imagine myself as if this is a real conversation to create transparency and to create authenticity in, like, you know, so I can be the same person if you meet me IRL as the same person as you meet online. You know, obviously there's a bit more freedom of speech online when we're talking about the honesty of our opinions because we don't have to worry about people. Well, we still do. We'll have to worry about people listening in. But, you know, here there's a little bit more freedom, but there shouldn't be as much freedom as, you know, there's no repercussions at all. There's repercussions, but those repercussions are delayed.
That's the problem with anonymity. And that's why I'm really glad personally, and I can't speak for other people, but I'm glad that I didn't really do anything online until I was doxxed online. So there's really no chance of me being anonymous. And in a lot of ways, if your fame gets too big, you can't remain anonymous because your IRL, you have too many IRL contacts to remain anonymous forever. Basically, someone will recognize you. So there's that. But like, I'm really glad I never had the chance to say too much anonymously online or had like an anonymous online persona because I would have said shit that I would never say under my own name.
It's like, in my mind, it's like there's something attractive about being anonymous and saying whatever you want, whatever comes to your head, and being as mean as unleashing the shadow aspects of your personality online. There's something attractive about that, right? There's something attractive about doing meth. There's something attractive about doing heroin. There's something attractive about going and stabbing someone. But there's also repercussions for that. So if you're going out there and you're shit posting, you're edge posting online, expect people not to respect you. It's pretty simple. If you treated people like this in real life, you get knocked out. People just wouldn't associate with you. So don't expect different social rules online. You know, but people get stuck in these echo chambers where they are degenerates and they do take part in this sort of behavior and they get used to it. And so when people say, hey, what you're doing is shit, like as if it was a school, like of, you know, school children delinquents going out and throwing rocks at a house, and someone comes out and says, stop that. And they'll like throw a slander and then run off. You know what I mean? Because there's no repercussions because you can't catch all of them, sort of thing. So it's this group childish mentality that we see, talking about quantum psychology. That's what we see. Because there's no repercussions, they can get away with this. But I take it from a mature perspective as if there is repercussions because that's what manifests the best aspects of my personality.
Oh, you're so well-spoken. I love listening to you scream. I hope you can find someone to like come in and actually ask you questions about. I'm hoping you're not going to fall in the same trap as me, which is being too intimidating as to not be approachable.
That's one of the issues that I have with being well spoken is people are put off by it. But there's aspects of me that I can translate. That's my issue. Is I can see something, I translate it, I put it in my own words, and sometimes people get lost in the word salad, and so that's actually an issue for me. So there's a double-edged sword there. But if I get a drink in me, like that well spokenness is just out the window. It's just pure Anglo. So I guess that's my it is a psychoactive substance, so it puts me in a different mind state. It puts me in a different what do you call it? Different node, or different personal subset, or something like that.
I want to call them mind states because normally they call.
Yeah, it puts me in. It does. It put me in different mental state. It makes my brain act differently.
And I think states of mind is like the way it just doesn't sound tight enough because like stuff's not going to pick up as a thing until it's like tight enough.
Yeah, well, it's like water has different states. It has solid, liquid, gas, and then obviously all elements have plasma. So that's the same thing with the mental state, except it's so much more complex, and that's what makes it sort of more vague. But you act differently when you're on marijuana compared to on alcohol, compared to having a cigarette, compared to drinking caffeine, compared to being hungry. Even if you have low glucose levels, like your brain is just dictated by neurochemistry all the fucking time. So there are different mental states, and sometimes we call them moods.
But alcohol definitely induces different moods and brings out more I don't give a fuck attitude.
Yeah, it's impulse inhibition, and that thing is that not only does it inhibit perhaps positive aspects like wanting to laugh about stupid shit, it also doesn't inhibit negative aspects like wanting to harm yourself or harm someone else. So it's not the fact that alcohol is bad; it's just that alcohol is dangerous.
Yeah,
and so user discretion is advised, just like any substance.
And you said in chat that if that somebody was a raging alcoholic would you say 120 times more likely to commit suicide?
120 times more likely is the evidence that I've read from US statistics. 120 times. That's if we're talking about harm minimization approaches and not wanting to cause suffering, like one of the biggest things is don't be an alcoholic. Now I'm not shaming people for being alcoholics and saying that they're broken because they're alcoholics, or that their problems don't matter and they should just stop drinking anyways. Obviously, there are life factors and there's genetic factors to being an alcoholic. I'm just stating the facts that alcoholics are 120 times more likely to commit suicide, and that's an issue that we need to solve if we're looking at preserving the white race. Because there's so many men and women dying from it, mostly men though.
I think one of the solutions could be everybody adopting the quantum mind idea. That if you're thinking better about yourself, you're less likely to drink and probably less likely to commit suicide.
I think all harm, all perceived harm, is the result of ignorance, and that's even the case. Rather than looking at as someone else is harming someone else, that's the result of ignorance. But it's also you perceiving harm and you harming someone else. So it's not just a third party thing where you can go, oh, look at you, you're only doing that because you're ignorant. It's also internal. So if someone's harming you, it's also an ignorance, as in you can take it out as a very wide scale, as in I'm an extension of the universe, so it's just the universe harming itself, and so I should be detached from this, which is very hard to achieve. And there's also the fact that you shouldn't feel hatred towards this person, although you can feel anger and repulsed by it and wanting to protect yourself because you are connected to so many other people and your pain actually inflicts pain on other people. It's like you don't hate this person because they don't know what sort of effect is going to happen. They're acting in the spur of the moment. Even though if that spur of the moment be 6 months, those 6 months will pass and they'll see all the pain that's caused you and all the pain it's going to cause them by retribution and by karma. So people that enact pain on other people actually do it in ignorance. And so even being in pain is a state of ignorance because in a sense, if you look at it in a case-selected way, it's you learning a lesson. It's the universe telling you that something is miss either within you or within another entity. Even though all entities are connected, there's localized agency in biological beings. So wow. that's a non-free will way of looking at crime, retribution, hatred, and harm and pain.
That was really beautiful. Thank you. I wanted to just, before we go to the next subject, come back to this alcohol thing because there was a comment I wanted to interject.
Mm-hmm.
Day to day, when you're sober, you have sort of a subroutine of inhibitions. You're not acting out every single impulse you have, right? Mm-hmm. And what alcohol does is inhibits that inhibition process. It inhibits your capacity to inhibit your sort of animalistic impulses. And the other thing I wanted to add about this alcoholism problem is that it is a real issue that unfortunately people seem to be coming down harder on the marijuana users than the alcohol users, probably because people, screeching this on the internet are themselves alcohol users. And, it is possible to be a functional alcoholic for a long time, but you're essentially pickling yourself. And therapeutic use of marijuana has been shown to help people sort of like if you basically just sort of become accustomed to being in a fucked up state of mind, it sort of same fucked up state of mind, but if you come to need that, it helps. Same with cigarettes. I've heard of people quitting cigarettes with marijuana. And yeah, there's the complaint of like people not enjoying the lethargy and the haze, but that's sort of meant to be there as a reminder that you shouldn't really be on the drugs in the first place, and certainly not leaning on the drugs for something that only a human or only God can really fulfill for you. But yeah, I wanted to say that, and go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, I think also to tie a bow on this alcoholic subject, I am not a fan of people that drink too much, get inebriated, and you know what I'm talking about when the behavior becomes so apparent that like the old person starts to disappear. But you have your friend, and then your friend's drinking so much that they're not really acting like your friend anymore. I don't like that state in people. No matter what drug it is, I'm not a big fan of stoners. I don't like their lifestyle. I don't like. Obviously, there are high functioning, marijuana users that might just use it on the weekend in very light dosages. But people that abuse drugs, and when I say abuse drugs, use a chemical in such a way that it changes their personality. I don't like that in any person. Doesn't matter what drug it is. Doesn't matter what person that is. So that's just. I'm not saying that marijuana good, alcohol bad. I'm saying that incorrect usage of drugs is negative no matter what drug it is, how much it is, and who it is.
Jen's description of was accurate enough that it made me think of my father, who was always against marijuana, but was always had a beer in his hand. And recently he got COPD because he'd been a cigarette smoker all of his life, as well as an alcoholic. And now he's quit. He drinks the non-alcoholic beers, and now he's taking edibles for his pains that he has. So he's finally come around to not being against pot, but and he's living the life of his consequences. And so he's turned his tone against me and my marijuana use over the last couple of years.
I think that it's more of a cultural thing rather than something that has scientific validity to it. And that's all it is alcohol has been in our culture for probably more than 1,000 years. And so people that don't drink, whether it is for like personal preferences and like their taste, or they are morally opposed to it, or they prefer another substance, the fact that that makes them other, because it's a part of our culture to drink. That's partly because Muslims are other, and so if you can't revel with someone, there is this barrier between you. Even though people say, oh, you don't need to drink to have a good time, that's true, but you're not participating in the game. The game is to drink, to whatever level, that's part of the game. And so if you're not playing the game, you're an outsider. And so that is what I think puts the social pressure on people that have dissenting views on alcohol. It secludes them from being culturally included. I think that's what the issue is and what we're seeing in the change of culture. Now, I don't want the pendulum to swing the other way and have no one drink alcohol and everybody be a stoner. I'm just saying that our use of alcohol is maladaptive, and perhaps there is a responsible use of alcohol that we can have, whether it be like 2 drinks, 3 drinks, however many times a week, whatever. More research is required. But right now, we're seeing as a culture, Europeans, even though we are such an affluent society in wealth, we have the highest rates of suicide per 100,000 people out of any other ethnic group or any other race class. Like that's disturbing, and it's not because of poverty; it's because of alcohol. Because we have the highest consumption of alcohol per any other race. Second then is East Asia, and then lastly is Africa, and that's the correlation between suicide and alcohol is higher than the correlation between suicide and poverty, and suicide and religion, and suicide and race. Alcohol is the issue. If we want to talk about harm minimization, if we want to talk about saving lives, we need to address the alcohol question.
Yeah, I would say definitely agree with that. Everybody knows that I like to drink and get drunk because that's what I like. I'm sitting at my own house and enjoying my own self. And when I drink, that's what I do. I drink to get a buzz. Is it because I'm poor? No, it has nothing to do with socioeconomics. Like Will said, it's more or less just boredom. I think for a lot of people, and
Mhm.
it's a
And
coping
sometimes it's stress as well, and
Well,
that could be stress at a CEO position. It could be stress at a janitorial position. Doesn't matter.
I think
have
it's
you
a little. Can I just jump in for a second? It's a little bit about the role.
Yeah.
Well, it's mainly about the role that these things play in our lives, right? Like, if alcohol is something that, like, you're coming home every night and finishing off a bottle of whatever, and if you don't get that every night, then you feel like something's missing. Well, that means essentially alcohol is fulfilling a role that a person or a religion should be fulfilling. And
Yeah.
I would say, like, in terms of how much is the good amount to drink, like, I just don't think we should be working in quotas. It should more just be like everyone should be not having
It's
alcohol.
the attitude behind it. I see.
You shouldn't have a relationship.
When it becomes a dependency issue, because I used to be dependent. Like I didn't get physical withdrawals from not having marijuana, but it definitely was a psychological withdrawal. Like, I felt dependent on it. I couldn't function in a day without at least 2 cones. I don't know if you guys have cones over in the States and in Canada, but it's basically like a bowl of from a bong, like a bong hit, whatever the fuck we call it, cones. I couldn't function. You know, I had psychological issues. I had social anxiety issues, and I felt that I couldn't function. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I looked at myself, through multiple reasons, and looked and said, like, am I going to continue on this state forever and ever, amen, and continue having to be reliant on this drug? Is this going to be a part of my life forever, or is something going to change where I move away from it? And that moving away is going to be there's going to be resistance because I have a lot of social circles that still use it as recreationally. And so, how do I do this? Because I don't want to be reliant on this. I don't want to be that person. I look at stoners. I look at people that have been using it for over a decade, and I was still in my infancy with marijuana usage, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I look at their life and like, I don't want to be like that. There's nobody that uses marijuana that I look up to and I admire. And so that was like, well, there's a correlation there. As the same with people that drink too much, like there's a correlation there as well. People that smoke, there's a correlation there as well. I don't find them to be admirable people. Who do I find to be admirable? People that can live life without drugs. That's what I find admirable.
There are a lot of people that you would be surprised how many people smoke weed and are successful in business and entertainment.
Yeah, but I don't find those people to be admirable. I don't find success in the Jewish controlled economic system to be admirable. I have people I know personally that use a lot of recreational drugs that make infinitely more times money than me a year, and I don't want to be those people because they're vacuous when it comes to character. They're all just talk. And they don't take care of their families well. It's like, oh well, I pay for my kids' school. Like that's not the same thing. Paying for shit's not the same thing. That's like treating your family as a whore. It's like I paid for it, so so it's fine.
I don't like that you're lumping marijuana into the drug category. Sure, somebody that does heroin or cocaine.
It is a drug. Sugar is a drug. What's the big deal? It's a drug. That is what it is. It's a psychoactive substance. It's a drug.
There's a difference in personality.
If he feels that way, I mean,
that's fine. I'm just saying that I don't like the characterization as weed is in the same group of drugs that like heroin.
Is nicotine a drug?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
Right.
I don't care. I just said I don't care if it's if it's tobacco, if it's alcohol. Doesn't matter if it's a legal or illegal drug. Doesn't matter if it's you can overdose on it or not. You can't overdose on nicotine. I still don't like smokers. I don't understand the issues. You'll just have an emotional attachment to marijuana. I don't like me talking bad about it.
I do because it actually it helped me in a lot of ways in my life.
Preference. It's an aesthetic preference. I think
and I understand this. I'm not trying to I'm defending my points of view because they're my points of view, and you're defending them because they're yours. I don't mean to cause offense and have a debate. I'm just saying this is the way that I categorize it in the most honest way as possible. I'm not going to change my honest opinions for your sake.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
so we can have a discussion about it, but that's why I'm saying it, how I'm saying it.
I don't see the point to having a discussion because I basically respect your position. You came to it through your own personal experience. I can't dissuade you from it. I don't agree. I'm more with the Ghost, but I do think there are issues with people abusing drugs. But the fact is, we've been using marijuana longer than alcohol, so there's obviously
Well,
some.
not in Europe.
Well,
There probably was.
I mean, it started out in India, right? So, but it has
Yeah,
been.
but not for recreational use.
That's what I'm saying. It was never for recreational use. It was always for spiritual use. So the question we have to answer is, what is proper spiritual use, if any, of drugs? And if you feel this way, then the proper spiritual use of drugs for you is no drugs, basically. And for someone else, like, basically my position is that I can't really dissuade people.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not saying that if I was king for a day, I would eliminate every drug in the universe. I'm not saying that at all. There is definitely medical and spiritual uses for it. I'm not a big fan of recreational drug usage. I think that is something that I want to grow out of. But also, I'm not going to prescribe my ideology to anybody else. I don't believe in that. To me, that's just psychological imperialism. I'm just telling my point of view and, explaining that I'm not saying that these people aren't admirable. I'm just saying I don't admire them.
I am, I guess, what you call a psychological imperialist. I don't like fights where it's like two bulls fighting with each other and you have to separate them. Like, that's what I don't like. So for you guys, I just feel like both your opinions.
Oh no, I respect Ghost, and him and I can get along civilly, and he has interesting points of discussion. We just disagree on this drug issue.
Yeah, that's it, and I respect his opinion and his stance as well. Not everybody. Drugs or marijuana is not it for everyone. Alcohol is not for everyone. Not everybody smokes. And if you don't, I don't find you. I'm not going to automatically think you're a bad person because you don't do those things or that you hold your opinion.
You know what this is like? This is like the topless women question.
No, cover up.
Because there's good arguments on both sides. I said, in this case, just have one place where it's one way and one place where it's the other way, because it's
and that place is the bedroom.
It's an aesthetic preference, though, because the problem,
everything's an aesthetic preference.
The problem with forcing people to cover up is it places an association on virtue signaling, because it's like, look how pious I am, I'm so covered up, and then it's like you're walking around in the desert in very high heat and like.
No, I wouldn't say that. I understand where you're coming from because it's a feminine perspective, but from a male's perspective, and you may have thought about this and may not have, but I'll say anyways. For a male, there is an automatic animalistic response upon seeing sexualized parts of the body. And so to have those sexualized parts of the body displayed, that gives a response that isn't beneficial for society if it's non-polygamous.
I got you.
I agree with that. I would say that it's a type
it's nothing about power. It's about, do we want an efficient society? Yes. So do we want people sexually aroused every 2 seconds? No.
I don't think it should be a public unless it's like a topless or nudist beach or colony or something. If those group of people are comfortable with that in their lives, fine.
Yeah, go ahead. But I wouldn't go to a nudist beach because there's always that chance of catching an 80-year-old there.
Right.
The argument against the position is basically that if every woman is topless, then people are desensitized to it and there's no longer that sexual arousal. I don't think people are going to go for that argument. But yeah, I do think it's like, we should tolerate like nudist colonies and.
Oh yeah, certainly, and I tolerate communes as well, as long as they are a self-sufficient, independent society that doesn't rely on, government subsistence. Then yeah, it's the same with everything. If Muslims want to set up their own system within the country, that's fine. Same with the Chinese. This. I believe in balkanization. I believe in nationalism. It doesn't mean that you can't live in my continent. It's just that you are you and I am me, and there's interaction there. There's no aggression on either side. There's no subversion from either side. You are a sovereign entity that does not impact on my sovereignty, which is how it's supposed to be on paper with the Native Americans. There is reservation. It's supposed to be a subsistence, autonomous organizational structure. I'm fine with that. The problem is when people come into these countries, set up these inclusive environments for their own race, their own ethnicity, their own religion, and then leech off the system. That's what I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with you existing. Don't exist off my dollar, though.
Yeah, I was trying to explain a concept of like not actually needing to physically balkanize in order to economically balkanize, because people can decide. I was trying to put this argument to Claire, which she pretended not to understand, but I don't think it was that complicated. So I'll run it by you guys. It's basically the idea that like, if you want to be sort of allowed to do more degenerate things, you basically have to pay more taxes. In like as a very general strategy, like people who are willing to live more piously would have less of a tax burden because they don't have the same like medical needs later on from like drug abuse.
I suppose in a sense that's more of a market approach because you're buying the service. It's like essentially if you want these people to move in, then you're supporting them. Like the government isn't doing that, or having some sort of progressive taxation, as you said, according to which services that you use. And or you could have that there's a flat tax rate and then you opt out of services, which gives you a tax-free threshold.
Yeah, you just balkanize, and rather than all the tax dollars going to the central government, they go to the specialized interest groups, which are represented by various ideologies. So
I think the governmental structures in the West are too centralized at the moment, and that's part of the issue. There needs to be more county by county sort of set up.
Some stuff makes sense to be centralized, and some stuff doesn't. Like knowledge, for example, our knowledge repository, like a library. Obviously, that makes sense to be centralized. You don't want like a tiny little library on every street corner, right?
No, that's correct.
So you have to look at it.
But it also goes to how much the service is used as well. If the service is used democratically often, democratically as in like by the people often, then yes, you want it decentralized and widely distributed and done in a way that is efficient, not just economically, but also like emotionally and etc. But things like a library, which is only a small amount of people are going to use, obviously you can centralize that.
Yeah. And it's decentralizing, I guess the way I think of it is like you're sort of duplicating the same service. So the question it reduces down to me is like, how many people can one person realistically be the theocratic dictator of?
Exactly. I think there's a threshold, definitely. And that's why I don't have a world domination pipe dream, because to me, it's physically and logistically impossible to, at this stage in human evolution and technological development, control every person in the planet.
It's a model. You don't control every person, you just control the like underlying structure of the social interactions towards a theocracy.
Yeah, it's like the Soviet structure. You have small worker committees that go up to a delegate, that go up into a committee member, that go up into the executive branch, and then it goes up to the chairman. Like it's there's a structure there, and then as that structure gets bigger and bigger, it fragments more and more. But I think that what we've done in the West now is that it hasn't fragmented enough. There's too much centralized control.
I didn't
go ahead, guys.
When I was considering anarchy for the last, I don't know, decade or so, I always often thought I didn't like the idea of anybody having power or control or authority over me. I didn't believe in authority, and this idea that somebody can come along and say, well, you can't, because you live here, you can't do these things. But I already know that's not feasible. You have to have laws. You have to have ways. Otherwise, it goes back to tribalism. Shit doesn't, roads don't get built, and school children don't go to schools, and society dissolves if that happens.
Funnily enough, I was actually having a conversation about this yesterday in private with Eke, and I'm sure he won't mind me disclosing this, but I consider my position to be neo-feudalist, and I actually consider myself an anti-technologist, which means that basically I don't want us to innovate any further. I think we need to de-innovate and return back to a more sustainable way of living, and I think technology is part of the reason that we need to do that, because the further and further we mechanize, I'm sort of a Luddite, the more we mechanize, the more we disempower people, because it's not so much the economics that we need. We don't want just government handouts. It's something about work that gives someone self-esteem. And so I think that what we're doing now through mechanization and through global capitalism is we're disenfranchising people from spiritual and psychological betterment because they're not doing anything. And so I don't want capitalism to run for another 150 years and have this, everything is automated. We're all sitting on like Wally, we're all just sitting in a chair, sipping on fucking smoothies, watching television, and that's how we're going to live for the next 1,000 years. I don't want that. I want us to return to a more organic way of life. And that would actually require us to go back to a more traditional way of governance. I do see myself as living in a tribal-esque society. Obviously, we have all of our history still there. We have all of that technology, able to be developed and implemented, but it's not a necessity to keep our society going. So I consider that position neo-feudal.
Okay, that's not a bad stance. I think I can get on board with that. And yeah, I agree that there's the ant and the grasshopper story, moral of the story there. It's not only the people sipping on smoothies 10,000 years from now and everybody else just doing nothing. If you watch that movie Wall-E, and it's, I think, Pixar movie.
Yeah. That's what I made reference to. Yeah.
That's a good depiction of really what they want society to be in the future.
And look, that's not malevolence. Yeah,
Well,
it's not malevolent. We're living in comfortability. There's no harm. There's no risk of danger. It's just the fact that it's a miserable existence, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would not disagree with that at all. No.
And when they were given the option and said, "Do you want to work hard, lose weight, and develop something with your own hands?" they went for that. And that's the interesting thing. You know, that's human psychology. Obviously, it's fiction, but that's human psychology. Would you prefer to sit on your ass and live in comfortability, or go outside in a miserable world full of litter, it's a desolate environment, and do you want to try to build something? And human beings said, we want to try and build.
But there's a fine line that you don't want to go too far down the road back to, say, like an Amish type existence.
Why not?
We don't, well, because, you know,
in my mind, the only argument against that is for like self-defense. Am I able to defend my society? That's the only argument for technology in my mind. Every other aspect of civilization can be neo-feudal.
And well, if that's all you need, then I mean, that's all I would need is just that idea alone, not being able to defend yourself or your family or your community.
Yeah.
But so the Amish own firearms, though. So
yeah,
there is that,
exactly.
that case.
Yeah, and I think that another aspect we were talking about, imperialism and invasion. I think I was talking about invasion with OV and Dr. Pol, and it was regarding guerrilla warfare and how difficult it is to invade a land with a conventional army and defeat an armed populace in guerrilla warfare. And so my position is that if we take that as an axiom, if we take that as a principle and apply it to this future neo-feudal society, if there's an armed populace and a trained militia in a way that, and I spoke about this before in a Confederate state, basically there is a national identity, a national standard of military training, and then it's decentralized, and these people can come into line and rank and file, I should say, and they know how to operate. They know what the commands are. They know what the ranking system is. They know how it operates. But when there's not a time of war, they just, they're relegated, I should say, to their own communities and keeping the peace. And so in my mind, that is a better system of maintaining autonomy, and also it's less of a tax burden on this because there's no standing army. And so when there's an invading force, you stick to guerrilla warfare tactics. And to me, that's the balancing act between why do we need nukes? Because you nuke something that you can't get the resources from that place. Nukes are the last resort, you know what I mean? Or it's a show of geopolitical dominance. What they really want to do is they want to, if an invading force wants to preserve the infrastructure and they want to take the people for labor. When you conquer a people, you want to kill as little people as possible. You want them to surrender. And if you take part as in this is a do or die and we're going to guerrilla warfare and we're going to war of attrition these people, then an invading force is very difficult, especially if you use terrain to your advantage. It's very difficult for them to actually conquer a people that have that spirit and also know how to effectively defend their territory with guerrilla warfare.
But I want to point out here too that if you go back to tribalism, doesn't that also bring more segregation, less unity, and then therefore create more hostile environments for all the pockets of people and all the tribes?
Between groups, definitely between groups. But you think about the system, let's say post-Norman England, there was very little inter-country conflict. There was very little baron versus baron. It was just criminals against the state. But then you think about Norman expansion throughout Europe or geopolitical struggles in the European context, there was lots of conflict. It was one king against another king. It wasn't really lords against lords. So then you can argue that organized standing armies and absolute dictated monarchies with the imperialist expansion is what's causing the most harm there. The system itself is good internally, and then they're launching essentially raids against other parties, if that makes sense. So even though you've got England has got maybe back then, let's say 1 million people, those 1 million people are all getting along with one another. there's an ethnic component to that as well. They're all getting along. It's when another group comes to disturb that peace is when there's a conflict. And most of that time it's instigated by, kings, queens, dukes, lords against other nations, if that makes sense.
But will we necessarily dissolve back down to monarchies and through your feudalistic?
Hopefully it remains a goddamn theocracy instead of a monarchy, because monarchies are always degenerate, right? But they always crop up because there's always some guy that everyone's like, ah.
I think that monarchies can function quite well if the king takes part in the wars. And what I think we saw after the Crusades is that the ruling classes all throughout Europe, Napoleon being the exception, none of their rulers would take part in conflicts. And so what you see is actually a dysgenic breeding strategy, because there is no Darwinian selection against dickhead rulers that have bad strategies, or people that aren't brave in combat, or people that, can't take an arrow to the chest and then keep on fighting. So if you think of the ruling class taking part in combat, that's actually a Darwinian strategy select for the smartest, strongest kings. And it also creates a unity amongst the people. So as soon as the ruling class stop taking part in war, that to me is the beginning of degeneracy in European monarchies.
What happens to global companies, corporations, in that scenario that you're presenting?
So my thinking is, if we transition to a neo-feudal society, very much an agrarian community, much like the real United States, for what I know of it, you take out Monsanto, you take out big business farms, and you keep it to mainly like family-owned farms. That's a society that can live off itself. Apart from maybe iron tools, which you would have to trade for. Apart from that, it's a self-running society, and arguably you don't even need iron tools.
But wouldn't you need the whole globe to be able to be in the same system? Because
not necessarily. If we take that,
what if there are technocrats? What if there are technocrats that go, say, to South America and conquer the land, or convince the people to work for their corporations and build their tanks and their weapons? Doesn't the rest of the world have to fear that?
But you think about it this way. The French, after Germany conquered them, didn't have tanks. And they still ended up kicking out Germany. They still managed to resist. They still managed to maintain some semblance of their authority, their sovereignty. Finland never had tanks. They prevented the Russians from invading through guerrilla warfare tactics. The Vietnamese didn't have tanks. They prevented the United States occupation of their lands. So I think about it on that sort of. Sorry.
Iraq and Afghanistan didn't.
Exactly.
Their tanks were removed.
Exactly. They're out there. They're out there in appropriated Humvees and fucking GMC pickup trucks with fucking war, like small arms that they got from the Russians 40 years ago. But they're still not a conquered people. Sorry?
They're 20 years into occupation right now. They're not going to be able to fight it with those means. They're still resisting, I'll give you that, but they're not going to be able to in the end.
But look at the financial difference between Iraq and Afghanistan compared to the United States. Like, yes, I understand where you're coming from. When you've got all the world against you, it's very difficult to resist. But it's like, what are you gaining? If you're an agrarian community that's not sitting on any natural resources, what are they gaining from invading you? Is it even worth the time? And then you have to argue that it's the Jewish mindset to control the whole world. That's the only argument against my position, I would say. If there is a malevolent ruling class that seeks world domination, that's the only argument you have against neo-feudalism. And that's my honest opinion. And I'll admit to that. I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm saying that if that is the case, then that's the only argument against.
The only problem I have with your neo-feudalism, it sounds like a nice society to live in. I grew up on a farm, and so I do find the value of hard labor work, is valuable, and it does give you a good work ethic and stuff like that. But the problem I have with it is what if it is the Jews that go down and take over South America, and they build up an empire, and everybody else is neo-feudal, and so that I think that paves the way for them and easy access to dominate the world at that point.
Okay, and then I would argue that the same sort of thing happened with the late Roman Republic and the Germanic peoples. And again, guerrilla warfare was what starved out the Romans. the largest empire the world had ever seen could not take on a band of tribes, that was spiritually set on surviving.
Okay.
And then there was the barbarians the Visigoths that eventually took over the Roman Empire.
Okay. Well, there was a collapse from within, for sure, there, because there were infighting amongst each other in the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
true.
That contributed to their collapse as well. I mean, there was propaganda, the people.
Well, even when the Roman Empire was at its strongest, arguably, when it tried to conquer Britain, it still couldn't conquer the Picts. Again, because of guerrilla warfare.
Okay, I think we've argued points to the point where there's nothing left.
Yeah, because basically what's going to happen is you're going to say that, and I'm not bad mouthing you. I'm just saying you're going to say a technologically, militaristically, financially superior force tries to conquer a land, and you're going to give an example, and I'm going to give a counter example, and that's all it's going to be. So basically, it's going to be trial and error, because I think that it's the remedy, you think that it's not the remedy, and so that's just axiomatically that's where we stand, and I think it's just a difference of opinion. But honestly, apart from this superior military force that is seeking to invade, what other problems do you see, perhaps internally, is the problem with neo-feudalism?
Well, again, I point out the tribalism would create more hostility between groups of people. It would break down unity. There would be less, and then you have the financial burdens. That you have to come up with another financial system for each group of people. Or if they do unite, then they're all going to use the same currency. Mm-hmm. So, what's your solution to that?
That's fine. I mean, like we existed on barter trade and credit systems way before we had standardized currency. There was actually research that an anthropological economist did that credit systems were the credit system was the mainstay. In Australia, we call it tick. Basically, you go to a pub and you say, like, look, put it on the tab, and come harvest season, I'll give you all this wheat, all this barley, or what have you, so you can brew more alcohol or whatever it is. So it was basically a credit system. And essentially, the modern day system is a credit system as well. You give money expecting that it's going to be worth something.
Okay,
so I think
that's addressed pretty well. I'd say you did pretty good with that. I could see that working. Yeah. Other than that,
and obviously there is criticism, because not everybody's going to want a bundle of wheat, especially if they're a wheat farmer. But it's not the perfect system, but it's a functional system, is what I would argue.
I think I don't think I have really a problem with the neo-feudalism system, other than those major points that I listed earlier. So, let me ask you about obviously you're pretty well aware of the quantum mind, and I kind of want to get back to topic of the stream tonight.
Yep, certainly. Yep.
And this opens up the idea that you're in control of your mind and your thoughts, and so
who is in control of whose mind?
Well, we ourselves.
Oh, I smell a free will.
The red eyes are flashing.
I'm missing something here. Fill me in.
Yeah, sorry. I don't believe that human beings have free will. So to say that one is in control of something is inaccurate. My argument is that we have agency, rather, an agency being the responsibility of something. But agency is basically, if you say that someone has murdered someone in the Western standard system today, say that person needs to be punished. But when you look at that person's life, you say he was traumatized when he was young. He had financial struggles. He had stress that was caused from society. Nobody reached out to them and helped him. And his parents had this recurring cycle as well to the end of time. So how much can we blame this person really when society didn't help them? And so my position would be that, yes, the person did commit a crime and is responsible for his actions, but the state is also negligent and is responsible for its actions or its inaction. And so when I say someone is responsible for something, it's that these are the facts of the matter. And so we have to address these facts rather than blaming a particular person in a retributive system. So rather than saying that person was in control of their minds and they chose to murder that person, I say that that person murdered that person for whatever means, and we can look at the causes of that. So I'm not going to say that he didn't murder that person, because that's obviously the case. He is responsible for that action, but the state, his family, that person for being there is all responsible. And so for me, it's sorry, I'll just finish up with this one point. So you can say at the largest spectrum the largest view, if you zoom out, you say the universe is responsible for the universe, and then you can zoom in and say that person pulled the trigger. What you want to do is you want to find the correct level of magnification to do the most good at remedying the situation. So you say that, like, okay, we can address the family structures to prevent trauma, which will prevent crime. So rather than saying, okay, how we fix this problem is just put this person away so we can't hurt anybody ever again, we say if we take a systematic approach, we can severely drop the levels of murders in general and see him as a symptom rather than a cause.
I can validate your points with that, with the prison system or the justice system in say, I think it's Finland or Sweden or Norway, one of those countries up there in the Northern European, where they take a more humanistic approach to and rehabilitating people and not treating them inhuman. They're all about changing the behavior of the people. But I look at it from this way, and it sounds like you're saying there's a cause and effect to the crimes that people commit. Like, this person did this to him, and this person did that to him, and that so they bullied this person to the point where they turn into a school shooter or something.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Okay, and I feel like it's not that. I think that there, there is that element to it. I want to validate your point there, but I want to say that how many choices do you make a day? I mean, thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? Choices.
Well, that's arguable.
Well, I mean, you wake up and you scratch your nose. That was free will. You made a choice to do that.
It wasn't. That's what I mean. It's arguable. So you're accepting that as a premise, and I don't agree with that premise.
Why not?
Because to me, and this is it's sort of an Occam's razor argument, determinism can explain the phenomena that we experience with equal explanatory power, if not more, without having to include something called free will. That's my position. And that furthermore, that denying free will actually creates better societies because it takes the Finland approach of harm minimization and saying that we get greater results from doing a systematic approach than a punitive approach and blaming one person.
I don't mind the non-punitive approach that you're saying, but I'm saying that the people that are doing these crimes are making their choices, right? Like,
but to say that one has chosen.
By the way, I was shot 4 times going from casino to casino in Detroit about 10 years ago. And that person made a choice to rob me. But not only that, that person made a choice to, oh, you don't have money for me? Well, then I'm going to have to shoot you because you don't have money.
I understand there's an emotional attachment to this argument. I understand that. And to a lot of people, to deny free will is to deny a part of their perceived personality. It's almost to disempower them because they believe they're autonomous people. And I'm not trying to condescend and talk down to you. This is a real phenomena. But in my understanding, I just want to be clear because I don't want to be perceived as disrespectful. But in my opinion, and this is an opinion, I almost lost my train of thought there. To say that someone's chosen something is to say that they could have chosen otherwise. But the problem is this creates an alternate dimension in which that choice took place, but we don't have evidence for that dimension. Now, you can posit infinite universes. You can posit multiverse theory. You can posit that, but there's no scientific basis for it. And so if we're arguing from the basis of science rather than probabilities and theory and mathematics, then the actual fact is we can't rewind the tape and roll the dice again. We can't do that. We exist in this world, and this world appears to be deterministic. Even if we talk in the realm of quantum physics with the uncertainty principle, that doesn't give us choice. All it does is give us uncertainty. To have a conscious observer change the states from waves to particles doesn't mean the person's chosen to be conscious. They just are conscious. They are there to witness it for whatever motivating factors put them there. Well, okay, all things originate from the original laws of physics, which are uncaused.
Is consciousness a choice? No,
I wouldn't believe that. I don't believe that consciousness is a choice. Consciousness is a quality.
Right. It's a state of being, I'd say. Not everybody's self-aware of their actions. People make mistakes all the time and then they self-reflect. Then there's some people that make mistakes all the time and don't care to self-reflect. They're making choices to do that thing.
How do you know that though? Because there actually are neurobiological aspects that give us the ability to be self-conscious. And so if those aspects of the brain are underdeveloped, which we can scientifically prove through CT scans and other various methods of looking into the brain's physiology, if they don't have that ability, all you see is a human being who's, yes, genetically, DNA-wise, they are definitely a human being, but functionally, as a cognitive person at the same level as you, they may not be. They may be more advanced than you. You don't know that unless you put them in this machine and scan their brain. So we make the perception, we make this assumption that they have the ability to quote-unquote choice and self-reflection, but we don't know that. We take that as an assumption. And so my belief is that all belief of free will is an assumption that when we research it, when we look at it, actually invalidates itself.
Doesn't it undermine laws, though, that if somebody
No, it doesn't, for the reasons that we went into beforehand.
This person did this to me, and this person did this to me, and we see this things get away with. Let's say, for instance, the Lorena Bobbitt incident back in the 90s. The girl had been abused. She was the wife. She was abused, and then one night she cut the dude's wiener off, and then she drove down the road, and they said she was psychotic and she had been abused. So because she was abused, it allowed her to get away with that, and she didn't get any prison time or any kind of jail sentence. She was not convicted. So it's like saying it's
that's fair enough, because if she wasn't abused, we could say that this is a speculation. If she wasn't abused, she wouldn't have cut the dude's dick off. She hadn't cut any other person's dick off before she was abused. So we could say that, yes, it was the abuse that motivated her to do that. Now, you would say that it's a choice and she's a bad person and she needs to be put away. But does that really resolve the issue?
No, right. She could have, but she made a choice to cut off his dick instead of kill him.
That's arguable again. You're working off an assumption that we have choice.
I make a choice to talk to you. I make a choice to use the words that I use to communicate to you. You make choices every day about what you.
Again, that's arguable. You just keep on stating the same thing as if it's a fact. I understand that you're axiomatically saying that we have free will, but I'm questioning that axiom. What is the evidence you have that? I'm fine if you say I have free will because I believe I have free will, and that is based off evidence. But I would bring your evidence into question. And I'd argue the scientific validity of that statement. Now, you may say that science is not a valid way of finding truth. That could be I could agree with your claim there. Science is not a perfect method to discover truth. So if that's the argument that you're making, and science can't prove that we don't have free will, that I'm fine with granting that position. And I would say that in the basis that we can't scientifically prove free will, there could be free will. My argument is that scientifically speaking, we can't prove free will. I'm not saying free will doesn't exist, let's say.
Well, until we can, I guess, all right, until we can come up with a method or of science or technology to be able to find if we have free will or not, I guess I'll sustain my argument for now.
Okay. But I just choose, and this, okay, we could say it's a choice, but I have decided that in absence of the evidence for free will, because it's not validated, nor is it invalidated, in the absence of the evidence for free will, I maintain the position of determinism and we don't have free will. Whereas you would posit that, no, indeed, we do have free will because of my phenomenological experience. And a lot of other people follow your pursuit. I just don't believe that's a better position. I believe that my position has better explanatory. Sorry, excuse me, Jen, just for a second. I believe my position has greater explanatory value. And in fact, if we adopted my position and instituted that in society, that it would give us better results. And I can tell you from personal experience that I have had better results, both relationship-wise with emotional intimacy and also my own psychology, that I've seen vast improvements in myself since adopting a non-free will approach. But that's an anecdotal experience and it may be completely different for other people.
I just want to address a comment in the chat here from Influence Freedom. She says, well, let's not hold anyone accountable then. And I think this is very...
No. This is a common retort against people who don't believe in free will. And my response to that is, just because we're not the only responsible factor for an act doesn't mean we're not responsible. And I don't know if this person heard my earlier statements on agency. It is a fact. Look, because you don't have free will doesn't mean you weren't the human being that pulled the trigger and shot that person. You are still the human being that pulled the trigger and shot that person. We can't deny the facts, right? The fact is, it was your finger that pulled the trigger that shot the other person, right? Regardless of the motivating factors to that, that is the fact. So then you either take a free will approach, and I'm not here bad-mouthing anybody's position. You take a free will approach and that person chose to do it and therefore should be punished for that choice or whatever. Or you take the non-free will approach, as in there was factors in that person's life that led to that thing happening. Who is responsible for those factors? Is it this person? Is it their family? Is it the community? Is it the state? How do we stop this from happening again? And then we look at science and say, what is the evidence to show that we're actually minimizing this from happening again? Because the fact is it's happened. You can't take it back. You know, if you're instituting punishment and retribution on the person, that's only making the family feel better. It's not actually stopping the problem. Unless you argue this death sentence, because then it's Darwinian selective processes. And I'm very aware of that argument. The European Revolution, killing people that committed violent crimes actually led to Darwinian selective processes that made the European man less likely to commit crimes. There's also socioeconomic issues, but regardless of the thing is, we look at the way that the Western legal system is working today, and we can all agree that it's not working. And so my remedy to that is say, let's try this experiment of non-free will. We don't have to call it non-free will. We can just say it's a harm minimization approach or a systematic approach or a multiple factors approach. And let's trial it. Let's see where it goes. There are countries that are doing it more or less. Australia is definitely doing it more. And so let's see how it goes in 10 years and then weigh that up against the pure choice approach. I'm just saying that if you agree that a chemical state can influence your psychology, if you agree that trauma can influence your psychology, if you admit that genetics plays a factor in your psychology, if you admit that culture plays a role in your psychology, then how can you say that choice is the most important factor when all those have formed throughout your life, all those things that we can change? We can't change your choices, but we can change all those things. So why are we blaming you for the choice, and why are we not trying to remedy those other things? It's purely an idea.
If I could just add to what you said, I appreciate the amount of detail you went into. And I think that what you referred to with this killathon of Europeans that was equivalent to a selection pressure, you could maybe even describe that as a domestication.
Yes.
And just to come back to this counterintuitive phenomenon of non-free will, and how at first glance it seems kind of nefarious, but when you actually understand how, number one, how free will's been abused, and like the dangers of believing in free will, the cost benefit analysis, if you take a sort of sober look at it, doesn't really line up in favor of free will. So if you take the example of criminal justice, right, if you're believing that people had a choice as to whether they committed these crimes, you might start to resent them, right? Which is going to lead to you being in an emotional state, which is going to lead to you making worse decisions about doling out justice, which is exactly what we don't want. I think that the thing that is scary about Will's position is just like the sort of I don't know what the bad feeling is exactly associated with nihilism, but whatever that is. Goes to your reaction now. I mean, this is something a lot of people have kind of been through before.
Yeah, this is a stunner for me. I've never heard this argument before from anybody other than maybe Christians or something, where they think that, God made me do this or that. So I've never heard this.
It actually appears to be the Abrahamic religion that came up with the concept of free will in the first place.
That's not entirely true. The Greeks discussed it as well. Aristotle discussed it. But they also claimed that to act evilly is to act in ignorance. And so to me, that's like also saying human beings can't make decisions with full knowledge. So they're always acting in ignorance. So their choices will always be flawed. And so to act as if someone could have made the right choice is also an invalid claim. So even if they do have choice, to say they could have made the right choice is wrong, because they don't act on perfect knowledge bases.
Yeah, but they're living under the same laws. Everybody knows. Well, no, not everybody knows what every law is, but everybody knows. I guess the golden rule, be good to people. But you got those people that decide not to be good with people. What if you have somebody like a Hannibal Lecter, that just loves just killing people? You think that person?
But that could be something to do with their that could be something to do with their neurobiology. We don't know that. It could be something to do with their trauma. It could be something to do with their genes. We don't know that. So to judge a book by its cover and say you should be a better person is really alienating for people, because you don't understand the motivating factors for their behavior. And it's also an unempathetic approach. It's alienating people. It's otherizing them. It's saying you're different. You've done something wrong. You're a bad person. You need to be locked away in a cage. That's all you're doing. It's not actually solving the problem, because another Hannibal Lecter comes up and you say you're another bad person, and all of a sudden we're running out of cage space. So if
I
we address
disagree
the
with you.
issue,
I think there's people that have been to jail enough times where they feel like they don't like going to jail because it's a bad place to be. And that's where other people that are more fucked up than you are go, and it's noisy and they don't like those conditions, and so they change their behavior because they don't like that.
but the question then becomes: are more people aided by prison time or are inhibited by a prison time? And I think that most people come out of prison worse, and so that's
think
something we need
it's
to
more
address.
I think it's more of a socio-economic thing where they're raised
not
to
true.
not. Certain people are
That's not
raised to
true.
not care. Okay, just let me present the argument. I think that some people they're grown up poor. All they know is a life of crime because that's what their parents did. That's what their brothers and sisters did. They sell drugs. They get caught. But for them, going to prison, especially here in America, is a better life for them because they're getting 3 square meals a day. They get along with the same people that they were cahooting with.
Right, the prison
On the
system, as
street.
it stands, incentivizes crime. I understand what you're saying. That's why we need to look at the prison system.
Not just it incentivizes crime, but it also provides them a better life. They're able to live and get 3 square meals a day, and it's structured. They don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. I guess it is incentivizing it. It is true, but some people go to prison and are treated badly in prison enough to the point where they don't want to go back, so that they stop selling drugs when they get out, or they go back to a normal life, or maybe they go to get
Yeah, but
education when they're in prison.
that almost never happens. Well, I feel like we lost the original point of this conversation.
It's related, though. It's related.
It is.
Because I thought we were talking about the difference between lawcraft with regards to will versus free will, or do we move on from that?
It's sort of attached. I mean, take the conversation however you wish. I've got about 15 minutes before I've got to bow out anyways. I've got to start the day.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's so nice to have a chill stream. I didn't even call it a chill stream. Maybe the fact that
I think this is lessons, because I think that since I was a mainstay on this channel, there's been a lot of people that have come in and bolstered the ranks, and so I think it's almost a second generation, I suppose, of the entropists. And so it's good to get a refresher, because a lot of people haven't heard my arguments. A lot of people are quite new, especially in the chat, quite new to my positions.
Thank you for reading my article. I hope you liked it. And yeah, audience, it's in the comments if you want to check it out. I spent 4 days on that fucking thing.
And I always take and to Ghost as well. Very commendable how you've participated in the conversation, because I actually see this. If I can't explain it to someone who's new to the topic, then I'm not actually doing a service. It's just mental masturbation. And so I cherish these opportunities to actually talk to someone and walk someone through it, because it's not just you, it's other people in the audience as well that don't understand these positions. And so I like to make my positions clear in a way that's passable for other people.
Well, Will, you are respectable, and you do articulate yourself very, very well. And this is only second or third time we've talked on stream, and so yeah, I am hearing new things from you, and I I like hearing the opposing views that you have, and even though I don't agree, I still like talking to you. It's really fun experiment for me to talk to people that I don't agree with, and can get along with, and communicate with well on the stream. So thank you again for coming into the stream, and having your points of views.
I hope one day we can come to some sort of agreement or mutual understanding. That's basically my goal for all these sort of conversations. And while everything is lovey-dovey, I might as well bow out now, because there's no use getting into another 10-minute discussion and having it run short. So on that note, I think I'll take my leave, everybody, and thank you very much for having me.
Bye. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Take care, Will.
I hope to run into you guys shortly. So take care.
We'll see you around. Oh, that was nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was fantastic. I was interesting. I didn't know those things about Will, and or his views, and the way he said them. I was baffled. I was really just stunned. Like, how can you not believe free will? And maybe this goes to what in that video we have queued up. One of those things where it's a block in your mind, like you can't get over a hurdle. that somebody has a differing view from you, and I'm not angry about it. I think that it's like a growth period, moment for me is understanding that you don't have to get upset and angry. And like I said, Will is a respectable guy. He doesn't yell, so at least I've not heard that from him. So at this point, it's like a learning point for me that to know that not everybody out there is a dickhead, that just because they disagree with you, they're going to yell, they're going to call you names, they're going to, do all those troll things.
I actually have a video of Will triggering someone, because he's kind of like, he's like me, like he won't go that route unless he feels like the other person's kind of, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I can see that with him triggering other people, but I don't see him getting triggered. That's what I like about him.
Oh yeah, I don't think I don't want to say he's not triggerable, but yeah. Some people are just not going to lose their shit online. Like, you won't see them IRL, they'll probably be in a pretty bad mood at times, but, they're not going to show emotion on stream.
Yeah. I've had my moments, but, I think that when you're around people that are more pleasant to be around, it makes you more pleasant to be around, or communicate better with, I think it's was it reciprocal? No, Elliot Blatt, you did not miss a spurg out. Nobody spurged. That's what was awesome about the stream, is nobody had to spurg.
There's almost never spurgs on my channel, which is kind of sad with Elliot, because, like, I don't know, Elliot, if you ever heard of this thing in Catholicism called the baptism of fire. My mom was a Catholic school teacher, and when the teachers knew they're wet behind the ears, they give them like the absolute most shit class, most hard, like the hardest class, basically the most unruly students. Usually like grade 8 or some shit, where they haven't discovered deodorant yet. But anyway, I feel like that was kind of unwittingly what happened with Elliot, because he and I used to stream together, and we don't anymore, and because it turned into too much of a basically retardation shit show of Spurga. And it's like, basically you have to look at it, are you going to tolerate like the hugely moronic digressions to farm the Spurgouts? Or are you just going to like channel the Spurgery into something productive? And unfortunately, when we started out, it was like Butterfly was basically trolling my stream like every time I streamed, and same with OV. Like at some stage, OV basically got in the same mode as Butterfly, like just trying to get the link to Gun and just wreck the show. So it's my own doing, in the sense that like I walked into these communities and I didn't really deviate from my own message. So obviously it's going to rile some people up. But
yeah, I've seen that happen in other people other than the people that you mentioned. So,
well, the reality is that like I don't want to have chimpouts any more than anyone else. The only thing I guess I don't mind is the occasional, like, you can't really predict it when it happens. Like I don't know if people remember what a recent week in review where Duvin and I talked about YouTube censorship, and it was interesting because we were getting into like a really fine difference, but it really did amount to like a full-on philosophical difference or distinction or whatever you want to call it. And it was great, but we didn't plan it, right? And I don't want to have like 7 hours of who knows what to have like 2 minutes of like, well, I guess maybe I do, and that's why I have the Claire channel. I realized I could actually do science via the Claire channel, because at first I was like just chilling, because like I'm not the type to stream alone, and I just find it boring or whatever. So I was like, just I got Elliot for a while, streamed with him, and then got Duvid, and then branched out more, and eventually went on Claire's. And Claire basically had like 3 viewers before I was on her streams, right? Because Claire, right?
Yeah.
So it was like 3 to 5 viewers, and I was like, oh, cool, So built up that channel. And it's crazy because now she's like literally getting more viewers than me when she streams, which I'm super happy about. And the reason I'm super happy about this is we can now do science between our channels. And the science I want to do is we can compare the content of the chats because she's like heavily anti-censorship. I don't know if you, excuse me. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
yeah. She gave me a wrench because Brenda Fly was gassing me out. So yeah. Um, but the fact that she had to give me a wrench for that to not happen is telling you the difference what you're pointing out is between her chat and this her chat.
Well, this is funny because do you want to talk about wrenches on chats in the context of theocracy? All right, so like you're one of the people that's had like wrenched combos with me, and I've had them with a bunch of people too. And it is interesting to kind of see where people land on the issue. And I liked your take that it was, basically who you're cool with. And for me, it was pretty much that, and pretty much like if I say to ban someone, I want them banned immediately. Like if I have someone who's like a libertarian with a wrench, then it's like, okay, you're fired type of deal. Doesn't mean I don't like you as a person, but if you're not, like I basically see the chat as a firing squad. If they don't do what I say, you're fired.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how many mods I have. I'm actually kind of curious now. Go look it up. But it's never been an issue. And it's funny because Luke Ford had the same issue as Claire Cott, I think, where he had to like take away a whole bunch of wrenches all at once. And Claire did that as well one time. So she like, I think what's happening is she like gave a couple wrenches. Then people were like, what the fuck? Why don't I have a wrench?
Right.
And then she got like pressured into it. So it just gave like everybody a wrench. And then some people in that group were censoring basically everybody else. So she had to keep giving more wrenches out because people were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's like a fine balance between, I mean, you know who you're cool with and who you're not. And if you've been around in the pockets long enough, it's not like you deserve one. It's just, like you've never given me a problem. So you're going to get a wrench, and, who's going to come in and troll you. And they know the people you give wrenches to know that what a troll is and what they're saying. And just all you need is the simple rule is don't say dumb shit. And, don't be, don't be slandering. You can disagree. I am open to that. We've had this conversation already, so don't need to rehash. But I think that I would like to talk about how to change minds. That's kind of the reason why I started doing the hangouts months ago was 'cause I've seen too much fighting, and that's never going to go away. I can't see that really, but I think for a personal growth aspect for me, coming across the quantum mind, it really made sense to me. It delves more into psychology than maybe reading a book on from Freud or Jung. Um,
That's not saying much, but thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, I have 58 moderators. So
okay,
basically, I'm cool with 58 people. I feel pretty cool about that, actually.
yeah, good
Yeah,
feeling.
thanks, moderators. Thank you for being my standing army. And, I'm not anti making people moderators, but if they start to abuse it, it's like, why? Why? But yeah, you want to know how to change people's minds. It can be done, but you always got to pay the toll.
Mm.
So when you're
What's the toll?
the more influence you want over people, the more you have to surrender your own will to learning what it takes to exert that much influence over people. So it is possible to do, but it's basically a question of, what is it you want to change their minds on? And then learning how to frame information in such a way that they come to the conclusion themselves. Remember the movie Inception?
Yeah.
So
You
it's
go inside somebody's dream, right? Isn't that they went into somebody's dream and altered their perception through their dreams?
It's a bit cheesy, but it's kind of like that. You're like never really going to get much traction with just pure debates. And I think Claire kind of makes that point really well, because at some point, when you keep going on that arguing road, it comes across as desperate in the sense that you're not actually that confident in your views. So it actually starts to work against you, I think, at some point, to be so adamant. And this isn't a criticism on you. This is just something I've noticed in the community of people who are like frustrated trying to red pill people that they can't. And I think the main reason for that is that just pointing out the problem won't change anything. It's the same reason, like, if you managed to convince a Christian that there was some logical fallacy and that meant something in their scripture, right? So what, basically?
Mm.
Because the religion serves a need, and people aren't just going to jump into atheism. Like, the type of people who can do that are very rare.
I think I
And
want to make the point that it really, the change comes from within yourself first, and then once people see that, then they change their perceptions about you, and then once they change their perceptions about you, then they're more open to listening to your ideas, and maybe then you can have more productive conversations, like Will and I had earlier, like where I didn't agree with two of the things that we talked about, and it was not because of quantum mind necessarily that the watching 10 minutes of a video that changed my mind about that. It's just, it did get me in the mindset to really think about how to deal with people in general. um, but I think there's more of a link here that goes into the quantum physics realm, which is what you're keen on, and that's what I want to pick your brain on eventually. um, so I think it's a relatable topic. So once you understand the psychology of your own brain, you can change the perception of your own reality, basically. I think that's where it's going to.
no, you can change a lot of things. You can change other people's perception of reality, basically create a mirage in their own mind. Can make people think they came to a decision independently. You can create their whole reality for them. Because when you reformat your consciousness to perfection, you can already do that for yourself. And that's just a matter of like turning it around to other people who are essentially sitting ducks.
I like that analogy.
Well, it's kind of scary, isn't it, that somebody could just hold that much power over other people?
I mean, is it just charisma though? Like if
I call
more
it
charisma.
I call
Go
it
ahead.
cult prestige. I call it cult prestige. So charisma is part of cult prestige. And more generally, I'll just repeat it for the audience because this is sort of a more esoteric subject there. Cult prestige is basically when somebody meets you and gets sort of an impression from you, to what degree are they driven to emulate your mannerisms? Basically, like, I don't want to say how jealous you make people, but the people who are, role models, I guess, would have a higher cult prestige. So you can think of it as like a current or some sort of, potential field where it's like pulling people in the direction of acting more like these people that they look up to. And the reason they look up to these people is because cult prestige.
Right. They're more
So,
likable, and then so like you said, they want to emulate. All right. So um, I guess this
so
is a
that's
little
the
bit
root of
cliche, but
influence.
it sounds like
The root of influence. The root of influence is to be a person people want to talk to, and then just say whatever the hell you want. That's essentially what, like, be a person people want to be, and you'll have ultimate power over them.
is it necessarily power over them, or is it just
Yes, it's power to form their opinions, control, however you want to put it. People need to stop looking at power and control. And, I'm thinking of fellow man here with his triggering by when I said mind control. People need to stop looking at those things as being exclusively negative. They're just things. It's good to control your own mind, right? I mean, that's what people are trying to do when they attempt meditation. They don't usually get there, but that's the point of it. And it's there as a practice because there's obviously some way to derive benefit. It's just not clear, right? What is that way?
I remember, when I was going to church as a kid, that the the one path, I had multiple churches I had in the area to go to, and it was my choice, by the way. Uh, but the one I stuck to and chose was the one that was the most charismatic. It was very engaging, outgoing, fun guy to be around. Uh, Maybe he used it up because he died at a young age. But he was a likable person, and I remember going back to that now, and I'm thinking about it. The reason why I chose him was because he was charismatic, and I guess he had cult prestige, and his congregation grew from a number of like 30 to 100 within about 5 years or so.
Wow. Yeah, so the issue is not the fact that cult prestige is a thing or the fact that people's opinions are formed by a minority. The problem is when people are projecting cult prestige because they want status, not because they actually have theocratic knowledge. This is the issue.
Okay.
The core issue is the people forming these beliefs of the people you're trying to change their minds, and you can't because it's conflicting with their beliefs and causing cognitive dissonance and making it because you're not giving them a mind state to change into, basically.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is like nothing you say to them will work. They may eventually change to their own volition, but it won't be because of anything directly that you said. Maybe your influence will be overall positive, but if you don't want to wear yourself out, trying to convince these people in these infinite conversations that you've seen what it is with Claire, like,
Yeah, some people are not going to change their viewpoints, and you've used a multitude of emotions when communicating with her, so it's not like you've exhausted everything in the book, but yeah, some people you just can't change their minds on viewpoints, I guess. I
me
see that all the
talking to
time.
her, me talking to her changes other people's minds.
No, changing her mind about.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I already knew when I met her that I wouldn't change her mind, and me talking to her changes other people's minds. And the whole point of talking with Claire is to show people how to get mad.
Okay.
I hope I've succeeded. I'll know when there's a couple more Gandalfs floating around.
Yeah, his spurgouts are well timed.
He's
Gandalf's Gandalf's another person that I really like in this group of people that we talk to. And
there's
I
no
was kind of
there's no group. There's no group. It's me and like 1,000 people attacking me at once. There's no group.
well, I mean a group of people that I can identify with. I'll lump it that way, I guess. What surprised me though is that I didn't realize how popular he was actually. Because I've seen him on Halsey's channel recently. And I looked at Halsey, as a pretty influential channel because he talks to TFM and that sphere of people. And Duvid also is a moderator on Halsey's channel, so that was kind of surprising to see him there. Because
Duvid goes on Halsey sometimes.
Who does?
Duvid and I have both been on Halsey, but it's awesome. Yeah, I think Gandalf was saying he's got like a once a week spot now. So he's talented. He's so talented. It's like I'm so glad he came along because I was basically kind of like doing more of that style of rhetoric. And God, is it ever exhausting for me? Whereas for him, it kind of seems like it just fits.
Yeah, I'm really like I said, I'm not shocked, but I'm amazed. I guess I just like I didn't realize he was.
It's okay to be shocked. I mean, stuff that's pretty amazing can happen, even though there's no free will and the universe has no meaning. The universe is still a pretty effing cool place. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
I mean, it is fucking cool. I basically feel like we're the coolest people on the internet that everybody else is. I don't want to say afraid of, but basically don't make Jen mad type deal.
I guess I didn't. I want to point out that I didn't realize like the scope of interconnectedness. The web of people that are talking to people. Like for instance, TFM, since he got kicked off of YouTube years ago, and I watched his content for I don't know a year or two. The MGTOW stuff, and it was interesting for a while, and then I made I was like, I don't need to see this stuff anymore. I already know what I know. And then he was on Halsey's channel, and I didn't know he was on Halsey because I hadn't seen him. I haven't watched his content in probably five years or so. So when I seen him on Halsey, and then I see Gandalf on Halsey, and now you're telling me you were there, and then David's there, so it's like, oh wow, what a web. So you've never talked to a turd flinging monkey?
No, I'm not really solicitous. So basically, the people I've talked to are the ones who have like approached me for the most part. Although, I guess technically, I approached Will to Power. Guilty.
Well, that's your power of influence there too.
I feel special because
Well,
I kind of want to take credit for discovering Gandalf. Because I
oh,
kind of did. Because we were kind of friends on social media for months. I got to see his rants before they were in voice form. He's like the perfect lesson for why oral tradition is better.
when you say oral tradition, could you break down what that actually means? I mean, I've heard you say it. I guess it just means talking to people, but I
Well,
feel like it's not in depth enough.
you could argue that what I'm doing right now is not exactly the oral tradition, but the knowledge I'm explaining is derived from the oral tradition. But if the oral tradition started up between us, let's say, it would take this form. It would just be like more in depth because there'd be an actual goal to what you were doing, which was like the full assimilation of all the knowledge. So it's just a manner of teaching, which is like one-on-one type of thing, and making sure that the student actually understands at each step what everything means, because you're basically just getting more and more and more power over people. So to have no way to mitigate that is obviously a problem.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I feel like it's
learn that in a book, dude. You cannot learn how to mind control people in a book. Sorry, go ahead.
well, that's a great point. It illustrates better what I was going to say, that you can't, it takes experience to talk to people. You can't just, get up in front of a crowd of 1,000 people. Maybe some people can. I don't know if I could or not, but being able to articulate yourself well, you have to be pretty well versed in the art of conversation to be able to carry on this. I guess what you're saying, oral tradition, where you are teaching or instructing somebody through your experience, is really what's paying off. And so I feel like if I talk to you and Gandalf more, uh, that's gonna rub off on me in the end through experience.
Yeah, so when you look at it from the practice perspective, really for someone in my position, the most important thing is finding an appropriate successor. Because if I'm unable to impart it to someone completely, then they won't really be a successor. So that's probably the weakest point of the oral tradition. But like the written tradition doesn't even have the capacity to reach into this realm. So it doesn't really matter if the oral tradition has weakness, because the written tradition doesn't give any way into this stuff.
I mean,
You have to
that's in the eye of the beholder. Anybody reading a book can perceive it a certain way, I guess, but
you
it doesn't.
can't get a fucking book that's going to tell you how to mind control people, because that way that knowledge can't be written down. The only way to really learn that stuff is to have someone show you directly how to do it.
And then that's experience and practice. So, I wanted
Yeah,
to ask you.
there's another aspect to the teaching, which is like there's no real translation for it, and I don't know what word makes sense to use for it, but it's basically like a software upgrade.
That's a good
I
way
guess.
to put it. I can understand that.
So that's the thing that the teacher is necessary for. So like that's where the written tradition really sucks, because there's no like teachers don't have to be that great to teach in the written tradition.
Right. They're getting everything given to them out of a book anyway. All they're doing is, hey, read this page, and then we'll discuss it, I guess.
Yeah, the quality control is how many articles can you publish, aka how many like people funding articles getting published can you please with your fake research, right? It's
Right.
really good. So obviously there's no quality control in the sense of like relative to, if you just want to compare that with oral tradition, that the way that things happen is that I do one thing for you, which is to transform your mind into a substrate that you then reform following your own will. I basically like remove the impediments to you doing your own thing, but it's always you doing your own thing, right? It's never me doing it for you. It's just that one step that I do. And that one step is so important that it's worth literally having everything else kind of revolve around, because stuff's just better if people are basically focused on making the people of high theocratic status happy. There's no shame in it. And it's the best way I can kind of describe how society could be, because it's basically like you have a benevolent leader and your job is just to keep them happy, and they're basically happy with like almost nothing.
Yeah, just give them food and circus. That's all you need as a
No,
leader.
the theocratic dictators don't need a circus. They just need to have their skills honed in the society. Like one of the big spiritual problems is that, you know, people aren't, there's no priest class basically. There's no like, so people who have priestly inclinations have no outlet for them, which, you know, like they get their little personality cult, but it never really like fills the void because they're not actually actively contributing to the maintenance of society, which is what they're sort of designed to do. Like think of it like a really complex anthill. You know, there's one class of society that's kind of meant to manage it on one level, and it's all just about managing different levels of society, some more spiritual, some more material.
And do you think that nepotism would be rampant in that society?
Nepotism is something that happens spontaneously. It's like atheism. So things like atheism, nepotism, idolatry, these are all things that just happen. It's as predictable as the sun coming up.
So if
The
a
question
guy,
is not, I'm sorry, the question is not whether these things happen, is what do you do about it?
right,
At what point does the behavior of people trigger a response, basically? And nepotism is one of those ones where it's not really clear at what point the state should be involved, if at all. So it's a good question. It's just important to understand that, like, you can see why nepotism is a thing, right? Like, if you have a business, you want to give it to your kid, not the kid down the street, right?
right. But if you're like in a body of government, then your kid is automatically like Ron Paul and his son, right? Just because you're in government now, your son's going to be in government. Does that mean that the son was properly indoctrinated or raised or instructed
Well,
by
this
them?
is the monarch question.
What does that mean?
This is the substance of the monarch question. Because a lot of people want a monarch. A lot of people want nepotism too, right?
Well, I guess if it's a business, it's fine. But if it's saying you're in control of people, if you're in the priest class, does that make your son automatically a priest?
That's a good question. Yeah. So, no, everybody should have to get in of their own merit. Because
Right.
if you give the hereditary merit, it's going to cause resentment in the underclasses. So basically, you want as much upward mobility as possible because people want to be upwardly mobile. Basically, you want to design society so that you wouldn't mind coming in at the lowest level of the social order.
I like that because it gives incentive for somebody that just, like nowadays you feel like, they tell you you can be anybody can be a president. You train your kid, you can send them to the best colleges, but may never become the best president or a president. So I like that because it incentivizes the rest of society to achieve or strive for that. If they want that, it's there for them. It's not like, there's obviously going to be some kind of competition for those positions of, influence and power, but
well, that's where you're back to the centralization versus decentralization of power. So, and this comes back to the question of how many people can one man dominate. And this is an important question because this is something people really need to think about for themselves, because it's not like it's a one size fits all thing. And I keep coming back to this theme that I'm really only giving you the underlying structure. You have to actually fill it with what it is that works for you. So you do need like a local strongman type thing. The question is, how many people can he like keep under his thumb type thing? Not in a bad way, but as a like
Right. Well,
trusted.
but with that, you could increase the number of priests in whatever class that is necessary for the number of people that are they're in control of. So if one person can handle, say, 10,000 or 100,000.
No, no. But he can handle that many. No, the people who would have dominion over thousands or millions of people would be in domains that were, what do you call them? Niche monopolies. So certain things have to be niche monopolies, otherwise it causes conflict. So, for example, the niche monopoly that's most important is knowledge. There has to be some compass to guide decisions. So, for example, I wasn't too happy about, free will not being real, but I accept it as true because the argument is the better one, and my own feelings don't really matter. So that, my ability to put that stuff aside is what I'm hoping to like justify me doing this, because I do think it's very important. Because when people get ideas about what's real that go against what other people think is real, it's a problem, right? Like
Right.
think of these religious fights. Like, I hate that these atheists and these Christians fight. I just don't like listening to it. Like, I got triggered when Rufus was debating with some Catholic Irish guy. I was just like, why?
Yeah, I remember.
Your wheels. Like, why are you doing this? And I realize this because like they both don't have any intention of changing. They're just regurgitating talking points. It's like normal people talking about the weather. It's like that cringe to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I get bored of that same stuff too. I don't know. I don't find it cringy, but I guess I get burned out, washed out. I get enough content in my brain for a while, like the MGTOW stuff. Like I used to watch Atheist Experience every Sunday for like 5-6 years. But maybe in the last year or so, I've just not watched any more of it. It's the same old arguments. It's funny, I guess. It's entertainment, I guess. The only thing I can think of, that the reason why I was watching it, because it was funny listening to Christians get their arguments to get destroyed. But it wore off. But if
You can't use that framework to construct the arguments that I'm making, basically, is the issue with it. Right? So this question of like niche monopolies and what should and shouldn't be a monopoly within that context is not a question that even can be framed. Whereas I'm saying we should frame that question, because there's a very big important argument here: is who has the final say on what's real.
Right, and you're saying that the priest class is basically able to control that in some degree through education, through um, uh, their their cult prestige, and so where we started off at this conversation, at this point of the conversation, was that I put a number out there that was way too big. So, what is the number that you think that a normal person should be able to handle?
Well, this is what I'm saying. It depends on the domain. It depends on the niche, right? So in the niche of day-to-day domination, that's all basically the same niche. But people are different, right? So what, people over here may need, one guy for every like 30, other people 1 per 7. Like, I don't really know. There's that. But then the thing I'm more focused on is this, that within the niche monopoly, how do you displace people within the hierarchy? Because that needs to be possible as well, and that's the harder thing to like preside over. But basically, like, do you understand the argument that I'm making, that there should be a centralized sort of unironic department of truth, where if people are having, because you basically need like a final arbiter on disputes. So this like thing needs to be existing, and it needs to be centralized, because there can't be another thing out there that might disagree with it. Otherwise, what's real anymore?
So there should be laws on what is, like you said, you can't be espousing desert nomad religions and stuff without consequence.
You can't say that something that isn't validated as true, you cannot declare that to be true. You can say, this is my opinion, but you can't say this is the truth, because the truth is, like, we want to basically restrict what the truth is. It's going to be the laws of physics, some other stuff we agree with based on a debate strategy. And when people have an argument between themselves within the culture, within the greater society that they can't resolve, they have to come to us to resolve it.
So it sounds like we need something in the QST arena that emulates the Supreme Court Justice panel, right? Like,
Sure.
would you say that there would be 7 people? How many people would you put on that panel?
That's exactly why we have to have the conversation, because the way I'm looking at it right now is like even those jobs would be regionally delegated, because the amount of legal decisions that you need to like officiate, basically, gosh, I don't really know how to say exactly what I'm imagining here, but you'd almost have to like give me the example and I'd tell you how I would approach it legally. But the idea is to like have pretty much everything resolved at the lowest level possible. So within the theocracy, there would be a certain group of people who would be considered like the experts on law. That might be like 100,000 people. Who knows, right? I have no idea how many people, because it's basically like there's an infinite number of people that could join, provided they meet the standard, right? So it all depends really on the will of people to want to be part of this thing, because you have to like take responsibility for running society, and you get to run society. So it's like a double-edged sword kind of thing.
How is this different than what we have now then?
Because all the justice is being imposed at the local level under my system. The only time it gets delegated to the priesthood is if there's something so goddamn complicated nobody can agree. They pass it up, and then the lowest level of the priesthood would look at it, and if it was obvious to them, they would resolve it. And if it was still too complicated for them, they'd put it up one level, and it would just keep going up until somebody was willing to take responsibility for the outcome of the decision.
And this branch would look like any other branch. Like, you could have engineers, you could have construction workers, you could have educators, financiers.
You don't need every single vocation to have a representative in the priest class. Like the merchant class doesn't need to be represented in the priest class, right? So some vocations don't require any priestly knowledge, right? So the people whose vocations don't require priestly knowledge shouldn't be running in the priest class, because they don't have anything to say to those people. They should be with the merchant class, helping the merchant class get better, basically. So they don't all like, only stuff that actually requires benevolence needs to be
but the merchant class still needs regulation though, right?
They do, and so we don't get involved with them unless they're breaking the code. Basically, they run, the whole idea is people running their own shit. Like, do I want to be involved in bean counting? No, I don't. Do I want to have to deal with the results of fucked up bean counting? F no, I don't. I really, really, really don't. And I'm willing to go to whatever length I have to, even though I don't particularly enjoy bean counting, to get that job done, to get my interests protected, which is the hug box, the theocratic hug box thing.
And the priest class would exist in a military branch, right?
The military is subservient to the priest class, so it's like a continuous distribution between the military and the priest class. So there's some people who are like straddling the fence between those two.
Like liaison.
Well, basically they're like just priestly warrior type people. They're still, skull crackers, but they're, oming as they're cracking skulls type thing. Just joking. I guess my joke didn't land, but anyway.
No, it did. I was just trying to like.
You can understand. For the same reason you can imagine what a philosopher king is, you can understand why there's not necessarily a mutual distinction between warriors and priests. Right? They're different vocations, but you can see how somebody would be like kind of good at both. So that's how that works. And then, it's the same for all the classes. Like, they have to intermingle with each other on a functional basis. And, the role that I play in the commoner's life is just making information available to them that's unbiased.
Okay.
So that they can go along with it.
And that's where
So much, that's the thing. It's going to be so much information that's going to overwhelm the average commoner. And they'll be like, okay, I get it. The information's there. And they'll kind of get it better. Like reality will make more sense for them. Right now, I think a lot of people are just really confused about reality. Feels like it's spinning and they just want the spinning to stop. I can do
right. And that's why you would need arbiters of truth to be able to disseminate that out to the public. To be able to affect the change, right? That's how you'd have to be able to change people. You'd, I guess, start with the education system, right? To level that, reform it all, deconstruct it completely, and then rebuild it.
It depends on people, you know. People aren't always willing to change, but I can do a lot if people are willing to understand the method.
Well, you'd have to have people to enforce it because you're going to have the naysayers and they don't want to do it.
Well, those people will be dealt with before all this happens. But
Right.
once all that crap is dealt with, you know, the idea is that, I mean, realistically speaking, people will be people that I have trained myself or people that I've identified within the greater community as experts and who they've identified as experts. And then it'll basically be, you know, teacher-centric learning, just a traditional school system. But if people aren't ready to let go of like the 9 to 5, you know, NPC factory of modern schooling, I can't change that. All I can do is say, you know, this is what it would be to make it work best. And maybe it's going to take time to transition to that system, but the teacher-centered system gives the personality cult that makes it fun. Because other people are like, oh, if I go into this, I might get a personality cult too. That'd be kind of cool. And it's a pastime. And people need a pastime because right now the pastimes are very self-destructo. Looking for status and an honor hierarchy is a pretty good pastime. Don't you think?
An honor, what did you say? An honor society? Which should be a good pastime? I don't know. What is it? What, that's you're not a leisure activity, or how do you? Can you explain this a little bit better?
I'm just saying, people, you know, have to find a way to use their time that's less self-destructive.
So, like sports would go away, athletics.
No. Nothing would go away. More stuff would just get added. So I have this plan. I can bounce my idea off you because I think it's a fucking great plan. We should have started doing this as soon as we became farmers, but I guess we were just like high on farming and basically accidentally domesticated ourselves in the process. Big problem. So yeah, my idea was like you train super hard or whatever, and then you're just like airdropped into a forest with tranquilizer darts, and there's like another team of guys that has the same thing as you that is dropped like a couple miles away from you. And you just basically have to like last man standing wins type thing.
Oh, wow, that's pretty neat.
And this is what I was thinking. You could like set up a bunch of video cameras to stream it. And you could have different streamers who are like giving a live commentary on
it. Yeah, we've seen this before in some movies, like Hunger Games.
Yeah, but they don't die in my version, okay?
Right,
they don't
that's
die.
fine.
Nobody dies.
We actually have that in the Army. We had that kind of training. We did it in tanks for it in the unit I was in. There was people that did it in helicopters. They had people that did it in airborne units, dropped out of airplanes. Helicopters did it. They're called war games, basically.
Okay, so civilian war games, basically. I think that would improve society a lot.
That would be kind of fun. Just paintball for everybody.
So I'm not saying everybody has to start being on these live streams 24/7 because like, look, I don't even want to have that big of an audience myself. I'd rather just have like the high quality listeners that are funny in the chat, you know? Mm-hmm. I just want people to be in the right place. Like right now, there's no, you know, civilian war games, and that's sad. There should be more cool shit, basically.
I mean, there is, but it's so low level. It's not very well promoted, I'd say. I mean,
you can't do
tag. You know.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing.
Right, I know it's not.
This would be actually like survivalism, like real survivalism.
That would be really cool, though.
You're
I
like
like that
literally you're hunting people down, dude. That's fucking hardcore.
with tranquilizer darts.
Yeah, dude. How fucking crazy would that be? Just to get pegged in the forest overnight.
Oh
It'd
my
be
God.
insane. I'm not saying I want to participate in these. I'm just saying there's an issue with channeling male aggression, which it brings back to the quantum psychology stuff. Like, I feel for men. It's sad to me that they can't really be their full expression of themselves because I really like super manly men. I love
Yeah,
it to see
I mean,
them,
the
casting.
the
for
best thing
being,
we have right now is just to go out and hunt animals in the woods. That's
that's
the
fucking
best.
beta. Cook. What, you don't want to hunt humans? Fucking beta.
Oh, I got somebody here that thinks they know me.
What do
They
you
said
mean?
I didn't fight in the war. I didn't even join the army, apparently.
Jared Phoenix? Jared, you couldn't even spell your last name right. I don't think you're telling the truth, Jared. What's going on, big guy?
For some people that in this realm already know that I've posted my DD214 months ago. So
Yeah, because I don't really like video games, so I just basically reformatted the internet into a video game. So I just play on the Claire Caw level a lot, and sometimes I play on other levels. Just joking, but yeah, I mean, the whole video games thing would be less of a thing if we had IRL Hunger Games.
I would agree with that. Yeah, go out and
Civilian
hunt
war
people.
games now. It is fucking a dereliction of duty that the government doesn't already have civilian war games, and I, for one, am upset. Where are all my alpha hunky chads at? Where are they, goddammit? I want them in the fucking civilian war games. Now! Let's see that.
What kind of rewards? Would there be levels like a tournament, or would you just do
Holy
like
fuck, dude. You'd
teams
have
of
the
people?
prestige. You'd have the prestige of being like the best, whatever it is, Predator. Just reminds me of those Predator movies. You know the ones I mean? Where they're hunting people. They're
Yeah,
aliens. Yeah, I just like you could be, the top predator. That would be pretty good because you'd have the status. You'd walk down the street, people would be like, "Oh, isn't that enough? Isn't that what these people want in the video games?"
yeah. They would give them more pleasure for sure. I mean, you could even include all age ranges, from 18 to 60 or something.
People
Or if you
just
want,
don't have enough. They don't. They need to give themselves permission to feel good again.
yeah.
And people think like that I'm trying to, take something away from them, and I'm just like trying to give you something. It only seems like I'm trying to take something away because you got to take away the false beliefs before the true beliefs are gonna make any sense.
Wow, I'm so sorry. I misread that. I sounded like at first that you wanted to take something away, and then when you reset it, you clarified the point, and yeah, you are really bringing something new to the table, and I like that.
Thanks. The only thing I want to take away is people's ability to hurt severely other people. So like some stuff people can't be allowed to do it, otherwise it's not really civilization, it's just the jungle, right?
Mm.
That's the only thing I want to stop. But the thing is, I know you wouldn't do any of those things. So it's not like, you know what I mean? You're not a murderer, rapist, whatever. Like, that's the only stuff I would want to stop people from doing. The rest is more just like advice on how to do it right. People aren't always going to take it, and people can't always implement the best approach. It's just they're not smart enough, fortunately. But yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to look at it as from a removing things, because we've already lost a lot of stuff. So then to tell people you have to lose more is like they're going to be super resistant to that because they've lost so much that they're like going to cling to what scraps they have left more, which is what is precipitating these problems with Christianity, even though people are well intentioned. So no, I just take the opposite approach. It's just like it's a love fest and a giving fest.
So you
And
would take away firearms then, or
what?
just you would take away firearms?
Ideally, you only have one armed class of society, like the military class, and they're armed, and they're the only ones who like really can use arms, and everybody else basically under their protection. For what you have right now, it almost makes sense to do like universal gun ownership.
Can we have machine gun tranquilizers?
Everybody, I think, would have to have the same gun because it just wouldn't be fair. Like, okay, fine. I'm sure people are. I can already imagine people would want to do like 50 million modifications to this stupid thing. But I mean, I suppose if you're gonna have to come up with the rules yourselves, I just don't want anyone fucking killing themselves when this is going on. Because then it's gonna be like Jen Sharp gets idiot killed in the fucking jungle, LARPing as a goddamn alien from a fucking Schwarzenegger movie or whatever it was.
Awesome.
You know, Claire Kah is still going to be covering me, even when I'm instituting, the human Hunger Games. She's still going to be like, Jen Sharf sucks at being the theocratic dictator because somebody brought a tranquilizer tank onto the battlefield and accidentally killed themselves. The pleasures of democracy.
Yeah, it reminds me of the slanderous reporter for sure. Yeah, always trying to mischaracterize you. I know I know a city councilman, and he told me he has a reporter that does that to him constantly. He takes everything he says out of context and puts words. He quotes them right, but then he'll spin it in a certain way. So yeah, I can see Claire doing that. You can't get rid of that, right? I mean, do you think in a future society under your theocracy that would ever go away? That behavior?
Crazy people making a one-pointed blog about you and why they think you're not good at something. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of against, like, basically the way I look at it is a large way that the cult prestige of the old ways was undermined was through ridicule. And I don't really want that to happen again. So I want there to be some way to stop the possibility for ridicule of the intellectual elites. But if plebs are making blogs about each other, that's a bit more of a gray area, right? Like somebody making a blog about me is bad because it's confusing people because I'm supposed to be the authority on science. So if someone reads Claire's blog, it's going to make it so that it's harder for them to understand why I'm the authority on science because of how slanted what she says is. So
that's where
that can't be tolerated.
So that's where the arbiters of truth would step in and say, "Hey, off to jail you go."
Well, I don't think I don't want to jail anybody. It would more just be like a fine, or not even a fine, just like a warning, just like don't fucking do it. Like I don't want. I do want to have somebody challenge my position if I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. And if you're gonna go against me, you need to actually put some skin in the game and actually face me publicly and debate me and accept the consequences of that debate, right? Which you're probably not gonna like. You can't just go around, basically shit talking someone. So pleb versus pleb, if someone's blogging about someone else, there's already some pretty good like structure to what exists right now in terms of
tabloids,
defamation and stuff. Well, like basically, it's kind of like, well, who do you want to be the celebrities? Because celebrity is something that like who is a celebrity in society kind of depends on society, right? So who do you see as the celebrities?
Okay, so yeah, that should be fine. I don't see any disagreement there. So,
well, I'm asking you a question: who is going to be celebrity in your vision? Just how does celebrity emerge, basically?
I guess people with cult prestige would be your celebrities, or
that makes
the athletes will still be.
That makes the priesthood celebrities, though, but the priesthood wouldn't be searching for celebrity because it's a form of idolatry. So there would be probably a couple of famous priests, but all the priests wouldn't themselves be celebrities because that would be going against priestly principles of non-idolatry.
I don't see it really any different than what it is now. Athletes, the winners of the war games, the personalities on TVs, I'm sure are still going to be celebrities. I don't think that would go away.
Okay, so I guess you can parody and satirize celebrities. It's just a question of can you parody and satirize civilians?
Well, yeah, you can't do it with the priest or the. Yeah.
Well, there's some tolerance. I don't mind if I'm satirized. What I mind is if people basically going against my dictations on truth. I don't want other people professing on truth. If people make a joke about me, it's not like I'd want to, guillotine them or anything. I think it's funny. I don't really care. In general, that would be what I would like to see everybody espousing, but I know some people get offended, but that's kind of where you have to be careful because you don't want to abuse the humiliation protocols. Because offense, humiliation, ostracism, those things all kind of work together. You want them to be working for you rather than against you.
And that's part of entertaining the masses anyways, to have some
It
comedy.
is. It is.
Yeah.
So there will be a delegation of the priesthood that will be the celebrity priests for this exact reason, so that they don't fall into some other celebrity trap, right? But they'll still be, celebrity stuff. People will just become, celebrities. Obviously, it happens. So in terms of what you can say about them, I don't think people should be able to like slander celebrities either, basically. So I just think should be across the board. Parody's okay, but in some places, some people may decide they don't want to even be parodied.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody says, I don't want you to do that, there should be like some kind of legal barrier there for them.
I'm saying there should be like a segregation of people who, because it's like literally cultural difference, they should be apart. The people who don't mind the dancing should be in one place, and the people who do should be elsewhere, because there's no way to bridge that gap because both of them think that they're right.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, you have the one person that's going to...
It's the golden rule, right? Because the golden rule is not really the same for everyone, because not everyone wants to be treated the same. So the way I see it is I'm on the libertarian end. Like I love just because I know that if I'm too authoritarian, people will become afraid, and then I'll miss something because they'll be too afraid to tell me something that I need to know. So I'm always on the like, go ahead, parody me,
Mm-hmm.
Be fun and playful. Like, don't go to the extent of like don't go crazy, i.e., certain crazy people who Claire was complaining that my stalkers were too crazy. That reminds me.
Okay. So what's the level of crazy are we talking about here? The all out libels type of people?
I have no idea what she's referring to. She's trying to shame me though, so she's like scraping the bottom of the shame barrel. She's like trying to make shame me for my stalkers. It's like they're stalkers. I didn't fucking ask them to stalk me. They just fucking hate me. And I think it's because I stole someone that they felt close to away from them, and they're sad. But I didn't really steal them. I didn't really steal them, did I? Did I steal you?
No.
Yeah, there you go. So that's why these people are just fucking butthurt.
I mean, she shamed me for several different reasons. So she cast me off on her own. So I, you didn't. So it made it easier. And I don't think I'm that person in question anyway, but I'm just an example. Yeah, that's the whole shame thing is such a shitty tactic. If anything, it plays into you.
It needs to be used correctly. It needs to be used correctly, and that's why I'm trying to do the stupid people shaming so that everybody else does it, and there's no other forms of shaming that happen, because stupid people shaming is basically it's the nicest one. Because people can be dumb. People can be dumb and just shut up, right?
Yeah. Okay. So shaming has some validity to it.
Well, the thing is, for dumb people, what I say to them is if they keep getting shushed in these circles, go spend time with people who are more on your own intellectual level.
Right.
I mean, we're all, cultivating this restraint to have this conversation. You don't even understand. Like, you're basically like calling me crazy, right? Like, that's not how this conversation is going to happen. Go play with your friends for a while. Come and join us when you're ready to show the self-restraint. Otherwise, it's like, it's the vibe of like a group of people that already know each other just meeting one new person. And like, I don't really like that vibe. Because all too often it seems to turn into a fucking interrogation. I don't know why people are driven to do that. Like, interrogate people online. It's kind of like,
I think it's a gauge of if they believe the same things you believe.
Don't you think people should ask, do you mind if I interrogate you now? Like a fucking war criminal?
on a stream, I'd say it's different than in real life. You know, if you're just having regular conversation in real life with somebody in whatever social setting, typically wouldn't ask them personal questions. You know, but I think in streams, it's more of trying to, especially in these groups, in these streams, it's about getting to know people, where they stand on certain issues, so you can, I don't know, categorize them in your mind of where they
That's
stand, or you know, how not to engage them with certain things.
That's a
So,
failing strategy.
a failing strategy?
Well, sure, it's going to alienate people that want to come on, but won't because they don't want to be subjected to this fucking diatribe. It's a miracle anybody goes on Claire's show, to be honest. It's a fucking miracle.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying with that. I think I did out of curiosity. You know, I went on so I could grill her. So, I
I just
mean,
don't always want to be grilled. Like, what exactly does grilling someone prove? If, like, I think I perform pretty well under pressure, but eventually, if someone is interrupting me like every 2 seconds, I'm eventually going to get annoyed because
oh
I
yeah,
can't finish a single thought, right? So it's like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, but like, I don't really want to be felt like I'm being interrogated by the cops when I'm on a stream. I don't think anyone does.
I mean that's fair. I think it's fine. You know, but if you didn't want to be there, you didn't have to
You
be
don't
there.
mind it. You don't mind it, but some people do. So I
Right.
think the type of vibe I want to have is like basically the people talk about what they want to talk about. They're not kind of forced to give information that, because a lot of people are just starting out. They've never been on stream, so they're like they don't want to dox themselves, and I totally get that. And it is hard to stay anonymous once your voice is out there a lot. But you know, creating, you know, I just don't want to create a culture of like paranoia where it's like, is this person just going to pounce on me and no one's going to defend me and they're just going to laugh at me? I basically,
Mm.
I basically want a hug box, is what I'm saying. So I do want to like, I do want to get to know people. I'm just saying like you can't really get to know a person over the course of an interrogation, and for a lot of people it's going to turn them off, isn't it, to be like interrogated? Like, who is this person to fucking interrogate me?
I think when the interrogation takes on the inflection of, uh, you know, this rudeness, this, oh, so you believe this, so I'm gonna have to ask you this and that, and then the tone all takes a different direction. I think that's what you're getting at, and that I'm definitely not on board for. But no, if you want to ask people questions about what they believe, so you can gauge, um, you know, other questions, or something that's relevant to how things that you believe, you know, try to find common ground so you can relate to them. I think that's fine as far as, but I wouldn't call that interrogation. I just call that, you know, getting to know somebody. Interrogation, I think, you know, implies that, um, you know, there's a mean nastiness that you want to expose. Or, you know, you're using mean or nasty questions to expose people, or their beliefs, so that you can uh, use it for your benefit. You know, like make fun of them, or something, whatever they say. So
If
yeah,
other
I think
people
there's
want
a
to
fine
do
line
it,
there.
if other people want to do it, I'm cool with whatever. I just, it's not my preferred strategy, and hopefully people can see why, because I think it takes a while to really get to know someone pretty well, probably at least a year. You don't
Mhm.
want to know every last person. You kind of want to figure out a way to suss people out so that you don't spend time, you don't waste time basically getting to know someone you're never going to have a connection with.
Well, if you, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I interrogated you. You know, I think I asked
Fucking
you.
Domingo did, that
Oh
idiot.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think you, I don't, were you on that stream? Because that wasn't public. That was on a private thing.
yeah. I
I don't
don't think I. I think I heard about it though.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, let's just resolve it. And he's like, at the end, he's like, oh, I just don't trust you. I can't remember exactly what it was because a bunch of stuff happened with him, and then it like turned into another shit stream on it. I think Zero's channel or some garbage.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
I guess
that's the kind of grilling that you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, that's a
I'm
good
trying to
example of it.
remember who's actually grilled me. Claire's definitely grilled me. Brittlefly. I don't even think OV really has. The times where I've really felt like I was under the microscope are few and far between. Domingo, Cade, kind of, but not really. So I don't really count it as. I didn't tick that off in the "you annoyed the shit out of me" category in my judgment of Cade, which is part of the reason why my overall disposition on Cade is in the positive direction. He's just so cool.
I wish you would have been there like back in April. Yeah, but I had just one thing with him, and then it passed. So I'm still okay with him. I'm all right with him. I don't know if he feels the same or not, but I'm all right with him.
Well, that's the whole thing, you know. You should never have to wonder if you're cool with people. It should be an instant presumption of coolness.
Well, there's an element of his testing that I didn't like, and then I didn't see it that way at the time, and I get it now. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is what it is. I'm not really bothered by it.
And we're back to quantum psychology. Hopefully, Cade will read the article and become even better at what he does, because he's really good at what he does. And, you know, maybe your experience with it will help him improve his rhetorical strategy, because I'm sure he doesn't want any bad consequences from what he's doing.
No, and he still participates in streams and chats, so he wants. I think he genuinely wants to get along with people, so I don't think you'd take it that way. I think you'd probably be receptive to your article, and maybe you should post that in the chat. By the way,
It's actually under the video, so if people want to click it, I'll put it in the chat again if people are interested. I had a lot of fun writing this one, so hopefully people like it. I haven't read the chat in a while, so I have no clue what people are saying. And as you may know, it's very hard for me to focus on a convo as well as the chat, and I don't want to be like Claire. So
I've been browsing it. Nobody's really, they're talking amongst themselves, really.
Oh, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot. Okay, Lambie said Jen just likes to sit on her lawn and watch hunky, bare-chested construction worker flop around on a roof or something. That's false. I like to sit on my lawn with a bunch of priests arguing with each other in an attempt to impress me the most. Yes, they're all good-looking hunks, but that's not my fault. Okay, what's going on, Scott? Yeah, there's just so many comments that I can't keep up. I hope there's not too much retardation in the chat, because as much as I appreciate the higher audience numbers, thank you, one and all, I really hope we can keep the quality of the commentary. You know, basically, if you want me to actually be engaged with the chat, clean it up a little bit. Okay, so Cookies 2050, Vigilant Christian versus Church of Satan's Entropy. This is the kind of garbage I really just don't want to see. Cookies 2050. I have no fucking clue who these people are. I basically have people in like generalized categories. So someone who's in the chat but never comes on stream, that's just like, I don't accord much importance to them.
I didn't even realize that Scotty Karate's in here. How's it going, Scotty?
He's great.
Yeah. And Cookies, I'm a little surprised. Cookies I've always been cool with, and yeah, everybody's got their thing, I guess.
Oh, a lot of people hate me.
Yeah. I mean, I got my haters too, so I think, I don't think that's ever gonna go away. People are always gonna have their feels.
Haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah, haters are gonna hate. And around these parts, when haters hate, we tie them up in knots and then make lol cows out of them and milk them till they're dry. I wonder when the Claire Caw lol cow will run out of milk. She just may be one of these infinite heifers I've heard so much about. This woman really doesn't seem to mind being wrong about everything.
And I thought it was funny that the one day that OV was streaming, he had her entire audience in his chat. And I popped into her chat. I said, "Hey, Claire, you realize that nobody is here listening to your Jewish rabbi? Everybody's over in OV's chat." And then she dropped her stream and came into OV's chat.
Jared Phoenix said that Cade is Jen's cuck. We're all just truth cucks over here. It's just truth cucking around here. We try to stay away from the personality cults, but we understand that personality cults happen, and we're all here at Church of Entropy very happy for Cade's personality cult. So there's no rivalry. John Vance says the block has third-party status. Yeah, I explained why that is, Vance. So unsurprising development there. Lambie says he's a pleb, damn it, and I'm saying, okay, do you mind being a priest for some plebs that are even plebier than you? If yes, good. If not, too bad. It's not a good thing that the bloc, Vance, is in. The bloc coming to power is a step closer to the collapse of the country, because one province essentially milking the others for welfare gibs, when that's already happening, is not good. It's just going to exacerbate it.
I'm not a fan of referencing mainstream media, so I think it's funny he's using like, you don't get it. Those are the people paid to run the show. They're the ones propagandizing the asylum.
Hey, Scotty Karate and Mr. Jones, I just saw your messages in the chat. Yeah, John Vance, the referendum. Again, I told you they can run the fucking referendum, but there's too many immigrants to get an actual positive vote, dumb fuck. This is why you kicked me off their stream, dipshit, because you were thinking what I said was, you know, a condescending Anglo-imperialist take. It's like, no, dude, it's just simple causality, and you literally were like borderline tears. So yeah, but I'm glad that you guys went full grug, because I gotta have some evidence to substantiate my positions, don't I, bud? Oh God, I know the fucking referendum can happen at the provincial level. Goddamn it, Vance, read a goddamn book. Anyway, maybe we can wrap up soon. I'm having a great time, but I got a couple things I got to do here, and yeah, we've been at this one for about 3 hours, so I really appreciate you coming on, Ghost, and also want to thank Will to Power for his time. He's a very busy young man, but also very bright and quite generous with his time if you're willing to hear him out. So, Truth and Dead says, yeah, dipshit, talk about clearing up the chat. No, I mean, clearing up the chat, like, I just want people to think in their heads, how can I contribute to this, rather than how can I piss on this fucking dumpster fire? Okay.
Yeah, actually, Truth, you missed a lot of cleaning up the chat earlier in the stream. So,
what happened? Did somebody get banned?
No, nobody got banned. Well, I banned a sock account that was obviously just doing nothing but slandering. But no, there was a lot of timing out of people that were making silly statements about slanderous, and slanderous in nature. Yeah, so thanks so much for having me on. It was really pleasant conversation. I want to thank Will to Power for coming on. A nice, pleasant conversation with him too. Even we had differing viewpoints on things. It was good to discuss them. I like the manner that the way we talk about things, and I look forward to more streaming with you and talking about the quantum mind and quantum physics and consciousness and how that all ties together into reincarnation. I hope we can tackle that beast at some point.
We got lots of time. All you got to do now is just get cozy, get in your comfy space, because we're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah, so, you help me get there. You really do.
Oh, that's great. I'll just say goodbye for now, and I'll play out a clip because I'm not sure about my outro clip. It had problems loading last time, so I'll just play a short clip for the audience. Thank you to the 33 people watching now. I appreciate it a lot. Looking forward to the next one, and take care, everyone. Take care, Ghost. Oh, sorry guys, just gotta find the video there. This is a highlights video from previous appearance I made on one of Ghost streams. Let's see if I can get that to work. Oh.
But I can't remember. I'm sorry, so I can't speak to things I can't remember. I'm really sorry there.
Okay, I'll recap it. Cade's your internet hero. You love Cade, and you're sad.
Actually, it's a love hate. Okay?
You're sad that Cade didn't attack me, who you visualize as a big bad. Oh, Ghost was saying he also loves to watch Cade fight people.
Yeah.
He gave the example of that Irish Catholic kid who came on. And I was like, oh, so you're not going to let anyone else on, Claire? She's like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. And then she's like sending me all these passive-aggressive messages like, oh, he's doing such a good job at debating. He's amazing. He would be an amazing secretary. He would defeat all your arguments. I'm like, yeah, that's why you're having me on, right?
Sorry, Jen.
Oh, there's nothing to say. It's all good. I mean, clearly there's some hero worship going on, and that's fine. And you know, it's there's no like, why would Cade attack me? You know, that was basically I think.
Has it occurred to you, Jen, that I might be also thinking of Cade as being me?
Well, yeah, that's what internet heroes are about.
Okay. Yep. No,
It's like you're playing video games as them.
Yep, you know, I mean, I think it's a low blow, but it's all good.
Why?
I'll take it.
Why is it a little
Well, because you're not wearing it, Jen.
Why don't you show me where I gave Cade preference?
Well, you know what, Jen? You know, this is where I hate you because you're going to have to make me do some goddamn fucking homework. But you know what? Maybe I'll have to try and do the homework, Jen, because you've obviously got some sort of eidetic memory. I don't, you know.
You're saying I gave him...
I need to back up my claims, is what you're telling me.
I'm saying I just treat everybody, you know, I don't want to say the same, but...
Because you don't.
Well, okay, I helped Ghost set up his OBS for like 4.5 hours the other day.
That's got nothing to do with anything.
Oh my God, was it that long? It probably was.
Well,
But Jen, that's got nothing to do with anything. What's that got to do with what we're talking about? That's like just putting tickets on yourself.
Is that preferential treatment, or is that just me being normal me?
Well, I don't know. I've yet to know you long enough on the internet to think anything normal about you, whether you're normal or not, or normal you or anything. So I don't know. I can't tell you that.
Okay, but yet you're saying I'm giving Cade preferential treatment. I have no clue.
Well, I see that. That's what I see.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Don't question
I ask
Cade.
you for example, and you say, "Oh my God, Jen, how dare you ask me to substantiate my claims?"
Because I don't mind bringing it up. Why do you want to forget it?
Because it's stupid.
But is it, Jen?
Yes.
Do you really think so? Do you really
Yeah,
genuinely deep down inside think so?
Fucking stupid. Yeah, I do.
Okay, all right, fair enough then.
Look, if you guys want to be in the Cade personality cult, I think that's great. I don't get frightened by personality cults because
you are one yourself.
It's not going to be a rivalry for us.
You know, this is where we're getting down the crux of it again, Jen. This is where I think is so wrong. I just don't think you realise how deep his Cade is. Yeah, you don't. It's only been about 2 months. I've known him for about a year and a half.
What's the worst thing you think he could do to me?
Oh, fuck. Jen, honestly? You really want me to say that? He will control you from behind the scenes, Jen, without you even knowing it. Without you even knowing it, Jen. He will control you behind the scenes without you even knowing it, Jen. That's my view. That's my view, Jen. That's my view, Jen.
Simon, you think Cade is like Jedi mind force on?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. That's what Jen thinks. That's what Jen thinks he is. That's what Jen thinks he is. No, not at all. I don't think that. I think that Cade is just stuck. He is completely about psychology. It's all about psychology with Cade.
Oh God.
He's your internet hero.
But Jen, get past that and let's talk about what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Jen.
so You think he's going to get me under his sway?
Yep.
With some psychological manipulation. Is that it?
No, and it won't even be him that's doing it, Jen.
Oh, it'll be someone else.
Yeah. Yes, it will, Jen.
Um,
This is where you don't know Kate, Jen. This is where you just don't know Kate.
Jen, he's totally right. Kate has been controlling me for the last 3 or 4 months.
He's been controlling many of us. He's controlled me for fucking half a year ago, for fuck's sake. Taking it into consideration, whereas Jen is just not even thinking about it.
Look, Jen is a master of blood spurts in her own right. I don't think she's gonna have anything
That,
to
but
worry
I'm not
about.
even playing the blood sports. I didn't even know what blood sports was until a fucking month or 2 ago, for fuck's sake. I didn't know that's what we were doing. I did not know that that's what we were all doing. You know? For fuck's sake.
Simon, you gotta remember, I'm gonna say it again, Jen is just an old samurai sitting in a barn.
Oh, fuck. Oh,
I had to go down the hole and hit the bottom, scrape my face along the gravel bottom for a little while.
Only way to learn, mate. Only way to learn.
was rock bottom when James Tipton came on the stream?
Oh, now, listen. Now, Jen, I hope you're not dissing James.
No, I'm not dissing James. I'm asking Ghost. The rock bottom was when Tipton came on the stream and started yelling at you.
No, that
I missed
wasn't. That was hitting the bottom. Scraping my face came a little bit later. No, I really.
You're a much worse drunk than Ghost.
Thank you.
Ooh-wee. That's saying a lot because that could get pretty bad.
Yeah. You know, I should take that as an insult, but I'll take it as a compliment. Fucking day.
Basically ranting for like a really long time, being like, I'm just being honest, Kate. I'm just being honest.
Look, Jen, I have been filled in on things. Not the whole lot.
Yeah, you're an anarcho-cadist.